yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Before I used to monetize the show, and I can't do this now because I would lose the monetization. I used to throw the transit cops intro from when they did the episode with cops and with the transit police in 1994, right after this. If you watch my interviews with Kenny Schnetzler, Joe Ocasio, and Franco Baraducci, it's there. But since we monetize now, and I like having money, I can't throw that introduction on because they will take it away, and then I won't have my money, and I will be sad. And on that note, welcome back to episode 270 of the Mike the New Haven podcast. We haven't done one of these in a while. It's volume 32 of the E-Cops inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. I'm really excited about tonight's guest. I met her in person, and she's a lot of fun in person. She was a lot of fun backstage before we got on the air, so I know she'll be fun tonight. Looking forward to this one. I think the previous episode was episode 269, Elizabeth Hashagen from News 12 Long Island, whose father, Paul Hashagen, I know quite well, retired out of FDNY Rescue 1. Elizabeth was great. She was very much a pleasure to talk to. For those of you, real quick, you were wondering why there was no show Friday. Last minute cancellation. That was Chief Steve Kubler for the best of the bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. Good news is Steve's back on for this Friday. We worked it out, so he'll be on this Friday. Sorry about that. I know you guys were wondering where the show was, so that explains that. We'll get our guest in a second. Of course, a couple of sponsors to run through. And first things first, speaking of firemen, here's Scott Saul with Electric Vehicle Rescue App. As electric vehicles become a more frequent sight on the roadways these days, it's important to know what to do in the event that they catch fire. And for firefighters responding to electric vehicle fires, immediate information at that, is imperative. It's a must-have, which is where Scott Saul comes in, because he's created the First Responders EV Rescue App. Again, the First Responders Electric Vehicle Rescue App, which provides on-scene information immediately to safely approach and work on an electric or hybrid vehicle that's caught fire. The more information firefighters have, and the quicker they have it for these type of emergencies, the better. And you can get this app on the Apple App Store, of course, if you have an iPhone, or if you have any other device, mainly an Android. You can get it on Google Play if you go there. What this app does is unique because it not only includes the location of the first, second, and third batteries in an electric vehicle, it also tells you about high voltage fuel cells and cables, ultra high strength steel, jacking and stabilization points, and cable cut areas, and also where you shouldn't cut in the event that you need to extricate somebody out the vehicle. And lastly, high voltage disconnects. So again, that's the EV Rescue App, First Responders EV Rescue App, which you can get on the App Store if you have an iPhone, and Google Play for an Android. Scott Saul created it. He's based out of Deer Park, New York, and this provides immediate information to firefighters responding to electric vehicle fires. Thanks to Scott, and now, of course, Billy Ryan. The Mike the New Haven podcast is proudly sponsored and supported by the Ryan Investigative Group. If you need an elite PI, look no further than the Elite Ryan Investigative Group, which is run by retired NYPD Detective Bill Ryan, a 20-year veteran of the department who served the majority of his career in the Detective Bureau, most notably in the Arson and Explosion Squad. So if you need a PI to handle anything from fraud, legal services, and anything else that you might require, contact Bill at 347-417-1610. Again, 347-417-1610. Reach him at his website or the email that you see here. Again, if you need a PI, look no further than Bill Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group, a proud supporter and sponsor of the Mike the New Haven podcast. Thanks to Scott. Thanks to Bill. All right. My next guest for exactly 20 years, from 1986 until 2006, split her time between two police departments in the city of New York. For the first 9 years, she was a proud tunnel rat, and I say that affectionately, with the New York City Transit Police. And of course, when the merger of 1995 hit, she went on over to the NYPD, became a member of New York's finest. And for 15 of those years, she was firmly entrenched in rescue work as both a member of the old Transit Police's Emergency Medical Rescue Unit, as Joe Ocasio jokingly said, the nurses with guns. And then in 1995, of course, the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, when the departments, like I said, merged in April of 95. So for this volume 32 of the E-Cops inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, we welcome our second female to the miniseries. First was Maddie Lawrence. Tonight, Anita Rosato. Anita, welcome. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm happy to be following in Maddie's footsteps.
Yes.
He's a good cop. Worked with him many nights on the midnights. Had a great time.
Yeah, Maddie is awesome. Maddie's awesome. True cop through and through, true E-woman through and through. A lot of people were excited that you were going to be on. Some of them were already in the chat. I said John Latanzio was going to be here. He is, for example. Kenny Bowen's also here. Shout out to Johnny Albanese.
Jenny,
Scott. Scotty, who remembers you, he didn't say his last name, but he worked with you in transit. So, as you were telling me when we first spoke, and you sent this back to me in the outline, and I appreciate it, it was very detailed. You were born and raised in Queens, and I believe later on you moved to Suffolk County, but originally in Queens. So, tell me about growing up there.
it was a typical German Italian neighborhood. I was right by Aqueduct Racetrack. I used to walk and take the double C train to Stella Maris High School. So I was kind of familiar with stations that like Aqueduct on the sea. Yes, I know where that is. And they'd be like, how do you know? Well, trust me, 4 years, I know. But it was a different era where we all played. You know, you went out with your friends, you played ball on the corner, you played running bases, you played stickball, wiffle ball. It was the typical things that we did back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. You know, nothing was organized. You organized by just ringing the bells on your, on the doors. You
Fair
know,
enough.
my father was a builder in the area. My father was a construction worker by trade. He backed the wrong union boss and got blackballed, so he started his own business. And when I used to come home from school, I used to help him close up his job sites. Hence the love for pneumatic tools. things I learned how to use as a child. You know, most girls played with Barbie dolls. I got to play with come-alongs. Come here, honey. Let's learn how to use the come-along today. All right. Thanks, Dad. But yeah, it was good. It was a good childhood. You know.
Oh, of course. Of course. And it taught you a lot, and that would serve you well for what you would end up doing in the transit police and later on the NYPD, as we'll talk about. Now, as you said to me off the air, civil service family, so it's not hard to see where the interest in civil service on your end came from.
At the time, it was money and benefits. At the time, seriously, at the time, we're the highest paid.
Yeah.
My brother wasn't yet on the fire department. My older sister was a nurse. The second went into corrections. She became a correction officer. And then my brother is actually working in a nursing home, started as a pot washer, worked his way up to running the kitchen. And I was just at that point where accounting wasn't working out for me. I was in my second year of college, so I started to take all the tests. Yeah, I couldn't make a pass cost accounting. Lost. So I took the civil service tests, and PD called me. And I had 2 years of college and broke my father's heart and went into to be the police department.
Oh, man. So that's,
we didn't know back then, by the way. We were all coming off of one test. I had no idea I was going to transit.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. This is something that's kind of a little bit of a roulette of sorts because it's 3 different police departments back then. You're right.
Yes.
You don't know where you're going. You're either going to go, as they called it back then, street, which was the NYPD,
Yes.
housing, or transit. And some people had familiarity. Some guys grew up in the project, so they saw the housing police. Some guys took the subways a lot, so they knew the transit police. But so some did not care. Some just wanted to go to the NYPD. I remember just a quick story as a sidebar. Jeff Oberdier, who you may remember him seeing him on jobs. He was in the bomb squad for many years. He came onto the housing police, him and his wife at the same time. And there were guys that when they got assigned there were crying because they didn't want to go to housing or transit. He's happy. He's from Ohio. He's saying, hey, we're going to be cops. What are you sad about? But the NYPD was the coveted assignment. So when they told you, and I'll ask you the same question I asked Johnny Bushing last year, when they told you, hey, you're going to transit, was your reaction, okay, or was it, oh, no?
It was, okay, it's a job.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a job.
Yeah.
And then you just really didn't understand the nuances until you actually got into it. I think transit guys made better cops because our job was basically solo patrol. So you had to learn how to relate to people. You had to learn, and it also taught you to think, where are my surroundings? If you were on TPF, did I switch? And at the time we had to switch radios over. So if you had a train run that went from Queens into Manhattan, you had to remember how long it was, the run from Queens into Manhattan. Did you change your radio over? What stops to get off at? What stops somebody could find you at? How do I deal with this person by myself? So it made you think. You learned tactics a little bit differently. Whereas our counterparts, and housing was probably the same thing. They were solo patrol in a bunch of projects. City police had NSU at the time, and there was a cop on every corner. I didn't have a cop unless I saw a train.
Right.
So it was a little different. But then after a while, like anything, you have to figure out where you want to go and what do you want to do. What path do you want to follow? Is it plain clothes towards a shield? Is it staying in uniform? So, and I made that decision in District 2.
We're talking with Anita Rosato. This is volume 32 of the E-Cops inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Maddie Shirley, I see you, and every time I see you, I feel bad. I will call your chief. I haven't forgotten. Just been so busy, but I didn't forget my friend. I will call him soon. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well with your school resource officer job down there in the great state of Illinois. And Carl Duenzel's watching. He usually
Hi,
listens
Carl.
on his drive, so I appreciate that. Haven't talked to you in a bit, Carl. Hope all's well with you, buddy, and the family. He says, Miss Nita, greetings to all. So
That
good to
that
see you,
was that's why if you realize what my email is, that's
Yeah.
where it came from.
Ah.
Ms. Nita 213. It's my birthday.
There you go.
Everyone call me Ms. Nita.
Miss Nita. Yeah, Carl was on the show last year, and if you go back and watch that interview, folks, it's hilarious because I kid you not, while we were doing the interview simultaneously, him and I both kept glancing at our televisions because a Ranger playoff game was on. So we were literally watching the game, multitasking that night.
Ranger playoff. Let's not even go there.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that the last year broke my heart. This year was worse. But you're right. We don't need to relitigate that pain. So you made that decision, like you said, in District 2 after riding the train point to point for a while. And you're right. It is a good point because when you're working with less, you learn how to do more. Now, granted, you would prefer to have all the resources available. And while that's good to operate within that structure, I'm not knocking those who have. When you have less, if you get depleted for any reason or resources begin to drift away for whatever reasons are, you're not panicking because you know how to operate in that environment.
After the merge, we were like kids in a candy store.
I can imagine.
Transit guys didn't take off for like months because we were so happy to go to work.
Mhm.
And our counterparts couldn't understand. They're like, why are you guys happy? We don't know. I remember going to a job. I was in one truck, and there was a fire in District 4. And District 4 at the time, having been assigned there, District 4 actually expanded. They expanded the command. So I was familiar with the old section. So we have to do a search to make sure everything's out. And the back door behind the men's gym had to be closed. Everybody left. Normally we leave our lockers open. So I forget who I was working with from truck 1. But we go down there and I go, wait a minute, let's make a right, make a left, make a right. He goes, and he's looking around. He's going, you guys work down here? We actually had something called the Bat Cave that if you work through the 2 tours to get a couple of hours, but it was a mezzanine area from a subway station. That's what people don't realize. It was an enclosed area. So I just keep walking through this maze and he goes, where are you taking me? I go, to the workout room. He goes, workout room. I'm like, now do you understand why we were very happy to come up into the street? I mean, it's just dreary. I mean, when you think about it, if you're in an underground station, you're really not supposed to go up unless you're on your break. So you have no idea. You don't see the sun. You don't know if it's raining. You don't know if it's snowing. It's 10 degrees hotter or 10 degrees cooler, depending on the season. It's no windows. There's no windows. 8 hours and 35 minutes. There's no windows.
Yeah, I'd go crazy. I don't know. You know what? I don't know how you guys did it. I mean, back then you were busy. A lot was going on. This is late 80s, early 90s, New York City. So at least in that aspect, you have a lot of stuff to take your mind off of that. But if it's a slow day, and I imagine there were some back then, yeah, that's when it sets in. Holy crap, I'm in a cage, basically.
Yeah, you count subway tiles.
62.
Yes, no, there were old timers that have, because we used to have fixes back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
There were old timers that could pull out a book, tell you exactly how many tiles were in a specific part of the station. How many were cracked, how many were good. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah.
That's where you find out that mace doesn't work on rats because they have no tear ducts.
Okay, I'm not surprised by that. Yeah, and they don't look like rats in the city. They look like raccoons a lot of the time.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
I've seen them, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to mess with you. As promised, Stephanakis is in the chat. He's not roasting you though, at least not yet. He's just saying hi. So he says hello. Hi, Steph. Good to see you, my friend. I hope all is well with you, and thank you for tuning in as always. So really early on, and I put this in the outline, and I wanted to ask you about it. A year into your time with the transit police is when Bobby Venable gets killed. and he was above ground at the time. I think they were transporting prisoners back
Yeah.
when they got flagged down. That's when he got shot in the gun battle. And you mentioned that was your first police funeral. Now, listen, 86 had been a violent year when you first came on for the city as a whole. Cops were getting hurt and killed left and right. It was the Wild Wild West back then, but this was one of yours. And this was the first time going to a funeral for one of yours. How sobering was that, especially for somebody like you at the time that had a year on the job?
It was a bit overwhelming because if you had looked, we really didn't have officers and cops being shot in transit like that. So it was my first impact to that many police officers and the brotherhood that involved around, and it didn't matter at that point. When I was in Transit Academy, we had a boss that said, "I know you guys aren't too happy about being here, but realize something: your color's now blue because you all bleed red. Doesn't matter what side your patch is on. You'll be respectful because we're all part of the brotherhood." And that's the impact that
Mm,
you see at an event like that.
yeah. Yeah, and everybody that knew him, I asked Kenny about him, I asked Joe Ocasio about him, all say good things about him, that he was really not just a really good cop, but a really good guy, and he had a single daughter. He
Yes.
was a single father, I should say, of a small daughter at the time, who's grown now. But yeah, Bobby, listen, his legacy lives on as exactly what I just said, a good cop and a good guy. So it's nice that people still remember him fondly all these years later. It's been, my God, because the anniversary for him, it's a day apart from Irma Lozada's anniversary. It's 36 years now.
Oddly, you mentioned Irma because I'm taking guitar lessons. Been taking them for a while. I had to find a new instructor down here. So I find a new place right up the road from my house.
Hmm.
And I'm speaking with the gentleman. He's an older gentleman, believe it or not. He's 70. Used to be a studio player back in the day. So he shows me stuff and he talks, well, this is Jimi Hendrix's favorite chord. And I kind of look at him. I go, well, it was because Jimmy had those long fingers. Um, we started talking and I told him that I was a police officer in New York. I started in transit. And he goes, do you know Irma Lozada? And I go, Freddie, everybody knows Irma. She was the first female police officer killed in the city of New York, their history. He goes, she was my student.
Mm,
So do you talk about a small world?
yeah, I
He
didn't know she
didn't
was.
realize that the cop that they were looking for was her. She was late. She was taking singing lessons from him.
Oh,
And he had told me she had a beautiful voice. She didn't show up for her lesson. He goes, and that was unusual. And I called her home to find out that she was the officer that was killed.
God. Yeah, you're right. It
So
is a small world. And I see pictures of her, and it's just like, what a waste. She was such a beautiful girl. Was a
yeah,
really go-getter of a cop.
I,
25
I,
years old.
right, yeah, I believe September 20th was
September
her
21st.
21st.
And then Bobby September 22nd. Yeah, Irma Lozada. And again, another one who's not forgotten. It's just what a beautiful person
And
she was.
he was surprised. I said, you do realize they honor her every year.
Yeah.
So I actually printed up um, something from her page
Hmm.
and I put it in a frame for him. He's got it sitting on his piano.
Oh, that's nice.
So
That's a good
yeah,
thing that you did. That's a good thing you
yeah,
did. I wanted to bring her up to it, as in memory of her as well. Quick little story on that, and this is not funny in the sense of haha, but it's just ironic the small world that it is. So I got a friend of mine, also retired out of the NYPD, Irma Rivera, who was a detective in homicide and special victims for a long time, and she came on the job the same time Lozada did. And so Irma, a couple of years later, Rivera walks into a market on Bleecker Street where she used to work before coming on the job. And the guy in there looks at her very matter of fact and says, "Oh my God, Irma, I thought you died. I went to your funeral." And she was like, "No, different Irma." But small world, right? It goes to show the impact Lozada's killing had. That, listen, it goes to show the danger's all the same, not just for males on the job, females too. And like you said, the patch is the same. Doesn't matter what gender you are. Patch is the
and
same. Danger's the
that
same.
was the point of the lieutenant.
Yep. And he
It
was right.
doesn't matter. I know you guys all wanted the glamorous NYPD.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what side your patch is on. You will always treat a law enforcement officer with respect,
Yeah.
whether he's in the city or coming out of the city,
Well,
from outside of the city. So I've always had that in me, instilled in me at that age.
it was tough back then, not just for you, but for everyone,
Yeah,
because, like I said, this is the late 80s. So crime's going through the roof. 1990 is the crescendo point where not only is there 2,600 plus homicides, I think the final count was 2,627, but Brian Watkins gets killed in the subway.
right.
While he's visiting Utah, or from Utah, I should say, to go see the U.S. Open at the time. So that same year, and it's funny, we were talking about this off the air, and I wanted to bring it up on the air. Here you are 4 years on the job, and this guy with the funny accent from Boston comes in. That guy being Bill Bratton. And he wants to revolutionize the place because his point in his book, The Profession, was transit was the O police. You tell
Yes.
somebody at a party, hey, I'm on the job in New York. I'm a cop in New York City. Oh, do you work with my brother? Do we work with my sister? Do you know so and so? No. Well, where are you? I'm with the transit police. Oh, he
Yeah,
wanted
the
to
old
change that.
department. Yes, yes, the
Exactly.
regular police.
Exactly. So he wanted to change that. And here he comes. Not only does he give you guys new equipment, he gives you guys Glocks mainly, and amongst many other things, he really does help change the organization of the department. It kind of unleashes you guys to be cops at a time when the city really needed it. So going
Absolutely.
from the leadership prior and working hard in an environment that's just unenviable and feeling like you told me off the air, like the bastard police, like the irregular police, to a guy like him that just rejuvenated the place, along with Jack Mabel. Tell me about that period when he was chief from 1990 to 1992, working for him.
Everybody was skeptical. We always used to get a recycled NYPD chief. And we thought it was insulting that they went not only outside of that, but outside of the city and got this guy from Boston. And we're like, what does this guy from Boston know? What does he know about the New York? Has he ever been on the subway? Have you seen Boston subway? It's not even the size of the Bronx. Come on. So, like, what does this guy know? But all of a sudden, we found out that he was just a hands-on guy. He would come down into the subway. He didn't want it secondhand. He wanted it firsthand. He would come down into the subway to see the environment that we worked in. And we're all kind of like, well, wait a minute, this is different. Then he said, okay, these, all right, we're gonna give you new cars. We're gonna get away from the Suburbans. And we actually all had a bet on who was gonna rack up the car first. Because it had like a 350 engine. You go from a crappy Suburban that's just chugging along to this thing that's a rocket.
Right.
It didn't last. Right. It didn't last at all. It didn't last at all. We racked it up. And
Oh man.
we started saying that wow, this guy wants to listen. He wants to hear what's going on. We had a man under. I wasn't on the job, but the Midnight guys had related it. He was partying in Eileen's. He sees the transit rescue trucks at a man under. So he decides he's going to go downstairs. And everybody goes, the chief's here, the chief's here. And, yeah, whatever. no, Chief Bratton's here. Yeah, because, we're all pranksters. So sure enough, now Jack May comes trotting down, and here comes Bratton. And we were just waiting for the detectives. Well, I wasn't, but the Midnight guys were. They were waiting on the detectives to classify it as a jumper, not a homicide. So that's what the guys are waiting for. And he's like, yeah, how you doing? And they're all like, Chief Bratton, what are you doing? Oh, we have a man under. Oh, I'd like to see that. Okay, he's in a suit. Can I go under the train? He goes, you're the chief. You can do anything you want. So there he goes, under the train with a suit on. And he's like, well, this isn't, well, this is not a nice place to be. No, it's not. And we had an issue. We were fighting to get different type of uniform pants and uniforms, because when you crawl into a train, that's just done for the day. You just end up soaking it into a pot and letting all the grease and creosote come out and whatever else you crawl through. So we realized that he was someone that was reasonable and you could talk to. And he allowed us certain changes. And he did a lot for us as a police department to bring us into the 21st century. The Glock specifically, I remember the rumor has it that when he decided that we were getting Glocks and transitioning from the 38s, he reached out to NYPD's range, which is where we would do our shooting. And he calls the chief department and says, hey, I'm giving my guys Glocks. And the chief goes from NYPD, no, you can't. He goes, oh, maybe you misunderstood the phone call. I'm not asking you permission. I'm just notifying you. Well, you can't shoot at our range then. This is how petty it got.
Right.
And Bratton, being Bratton, turned around and said, that's fine. I'll build my own range. And he did.
He did. And he did.
Avenue X. Avenue X exists because Bratton built it.
Oh, wow. And not only
he rented Nassau shooting range in the interim of that being built. So without a doubt, we had the FATS machine. The equipment that we had was state of the art. He was allowing us to do things. And when he left, we were really, we weren't happy when he left. Because he made us proud. He gave us dignity. He made us smile, It's only somebody who listens. that doesn't listen to secondhand goes into the subway and sees for himself.
Right.
That's a leader to me.
Yeah, he always led from the front. By the time he left, him and Maple, well, Maple stuck around. He brought Maple back when he became
Yes.
NYPD commissioner in 1994. CompStat really started there. They had it with dots on a map. It wasn't
Yes.
even computerized yet, but it started in transit. But by the time they left, or he left, crime was down 27% in the subway. So whatever the problems facing the city above ground were, those weren't the same problems by the time he left in 1992. But he left you guys in good shape. He certainly left you better than he found you at the beginning of 90.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, that movie that I referenced earlier,
mm-hmm.
they did such good research. Jack Maples mentioned in it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
It was his whole idea was stop the crime before it gets in the subway. Yeah. That's why the sweep started. That's why everybody was doing. Everybody had warrants. We were picking up guys that were wanted for murder out of state. Everybody was having a warrant check that night. There was no summonses issued. Everybody was getting arrested. So we stopped so much crime and weapons coming into the subway, it had to drop.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was the homeless people. He started the homeless outreach unit to start to clean up the homeless people and get them out of just living in the subways.
And not only that, he gave you guys a bus, multiple buses, city buses
yes.
that weren't being used anymore, the mobile
yes.
arrest centers, which was incredible.
It was
a jail on wheels.
Yep. Pull up.
Yep, there you go. And housing later took one for themselves down the road, but that started because of Bratton as well. So
now starting number 12.
Yeah, pretty much get them processed, get them moving. But in 91, now by this point, like I said, you're in District 2. You're in one of the steady RMPs. By that point, it's a different fleet. Later on, you guys got these cool Chevy Caprices on top of that right before the merger. So you're driving around with the boss at that time, and that's when the opportunity to go into EMRU comes about, of course. And is it easy? No. It's a small unit. It takes the best of the best to get in there. But you seem like the type of person in talking with you off the air and now on the air that if there's a challenge, you want to face it straight on. You want to go straight through.
Yes.
And here was a great opportunity for you. So tell me about the motivations to go into rescue.
It's really, really simple. When you drive the boss, you get to go to all the jobs.
Fair enough.
Except for a man under.
Uh-huh.
EMRU was the only people allowed under the train. And that kind of ticked me off. Well, how come we can't go under the train? I want to go under the train. And he's like, no, they go under the train. Well, who are they? Oh, they're the rescue unit. And what do they do? And that's how it started. That from there on, my goal was to get into that unit. And a lot of the guys that went in were volley firemen. So they already had EMTs, their EMT license. I wasn't a volley. I was just someone who wanted. So tell me the requirements. I got to have an EMT? Okay. I found myself a course in Queens and I got my EMT license. The only reason why I got it was to be in transit rescue. The equipment was heavy. You start moving things, you start working out, you start building your body up to meet the challenge of moving the equipment. I believe the heaviest box we had was a wood crib box. It was about 120 pounds. And yeah, that wasn't fun.
I can imagine 120 pounds. It's like about my weight.
Yeah, it was just a box that we had all the pieces of wood that we needed to lift the train with.
Yeah. There was a job. I remember seeing this in the episode of Cops where Franco's on it, Mike Wacer's on it.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and they're moving the guy. They're not doing it disrespectfully. They had to do this, but they were moving him with a piece of wood. It was somebody who was a DOA underneath the train. So that's not fun. But you guys did it. I mean, again, and that's even firemen have told me we didn't mind for as much issues as they had with ESU back then because of the Type A personality stuff. They didn't mind you guys because nobody, and John Bushing said this last year too when he was on, nobody wanted to do what you guys were doing, but you guys were willing to do it.
And we got along with the fire department. And this was the funny thing. Up until the day of the merge, we got along with the fire department. We got along with the rescue units. The day I put a patch on my other shoulder, I went to the same firehouse I was at the day before, and they dropped the door. I was like, hello, I was here yesterday, Oh,
my goodness. Well, go ahead, my bad.
No, it's all right. So, it is what it is. You want to play nice in the sandbox. I'll play nice in the sandbox. You don't want to play nice. I don't have to play nice either. And we had a job. I worked in midnight 9 truck backed us up on a job. Fire department was there, and it was a space case. Now, when we got into ESU, man-unders were our bread and butter. That's, you want to know how to lift something, ask the transit guy. So it's the SOP of the MTA to engage the handbrakes on every train. And again, the technology is a little different now. But back then, when you tighten the train, it didn't allow the body of the train to move. So when you try to push the train off of the space case, which is someone trapped between the train and the platform, train doesn't move. I didn't want to embarrass the guy, so I leaned down really quietly and I go, you have to release the handbrake while you're inflating the bag. And he didn't look up to see who I was. And I had 2 officers from 9 truck who knew me very well, who goes, I got this, honey. Tito and Tony put their heads down and they go, oh my God. And I just said, that would be Officer Honey to you. And he looked up, just completely white. And I guess they finally released, they get the body out and he steps up. He goes, I thought you were from EMS. I said, why don't you look up sometimes? I said, I'll give you one further. I said, prior to putting this patch on this side, I was a transit cop. That's my bread and butter. So for your information, you have to disengage the handbrake on a space case. That's the only time you disengage it. And he just kind of looked at me. I'm like, goodbye. But the reaction to Tito and Tony, they were like, oh my God. This is
you messed up. And it didn't. And
No,
it didn't. And
no.
rightfully so. But you know what? I admire that about you because listen, back then it wasn't easy, but especially for women, for women on the job, it wasn't easy because there was that disrespect. Attitudes have changed. Was everybody that way? Of course not. But you had some guys like that thought she should be in the kitchen. And it's an unfortunate mentality, but some at it. So you were tough, girl, and you needed to be.
I hate to tell you this. I was in 10 truck. I was in, now 10 truck relates to 2000, 1999, 2000.
Around there, yeah.
We get a call on the midnight. I'm working with Kenny Schnetzler. We had a call from organized crime in Flushing, after hours gambling joint. I was operating a vehicle, so I'm operating the tools. I step out of the truck. The lieutenant does this. When he looks at me, and I go, okay. What do you need, Lou? He goes, we need the locks cut. Okay. Go to the back of the truck, take out the K12 saw, 3 pulls started up, buzz his locks off. There's no conversation. And I just look at him, I go, what else do you need? He goes, can you stay till we figure out what we got inside to see if there's anything else we have to get into? I'm on the clock until 8:05 unless a cop is shot, boss. And then that was my answer. And I just stood there. So he comes out, he goes, everything seems to be pretty good inside. I said, okay. I take his name. He goes, I think I got to apologize. I said, apologize for what? He goes, I think I gave you a look when you pulled up and got out of the truck. I said, you think? He goes, no, I did. I said, yeah. He goes, but that didn't stop you. He goes, you went to the back of the truck and got your, the tool out and you did what I asked. I said, why is it so hard for you to imagine that I could do that? Now, on the flip side, there are women who get into a unit that don't belong there or get into a place that they don't belong. They think it's cool. And the difference is if one woman can't, then none of us can. We're not judged on an individual basis. So sometimes, if you're in a place that requires a certain amount of physical strength, that tool is not going to get lighter. You need to build your body strength up to pick the tool up. And I think that's what guys respected about me was that I worked on, if I was coming up short, I would work on something. I would build my body up to that. And that's just the way I was. That's just me. I can't say that about everybody, but people need to judge women on an individual basis and not lump us all into, oh, women don't belong in this unit. And I mean, I've gotten stories back from guys that I know who said, okay, not all women do, but I'll call up Anita and not only will she kick you behind, but she'll make you a nice cup of coffee afterwards.
And there's the highlight of the show. Usually I put out highlight clips the next day. This portion is going to be the highlight. I already know it.
You can shoot they all out of a flea at 100 yards and to make a nice cup of coffee.
Ah, there you go. Just to go back a second, because I just did a show on this with Rick Martinez and Patty Pogan, who responded to it. When the Union Square derailment happened in '91, were you in EMRU by that point?
Yes, but I don't think I don't, either I wasn't working that day or I was covering the citywide,
Ah,
because you can't dedicate all, it's just like 9/11. You can't dedicate everybody to that job. You
right. You
still
needed
have to
coverage for the
maintain
other
and cover the
parts.
city.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, because there was a few jobs, and Charlie Caperna brought this up in the episode of Cops when him and Kenny were riding around this. You got 4 or 6 trucks covering not just one borough. It's not like, with ESU, okay, you got Adam 1, Truck 1, and Adam 2, Truck 2 covering most of Manhattan, uptown, downtown, respectively. 4 to 6 trucks are covering 4 of the 5 boroughs, with the exception of Staten Island. So you're riding around all over the place. But like you said, it built the camaraderie of the unit, because not only did it build the camaraderie from working with the small group of guys and gals, it also made you guys incentivized, to be proud of the work you were doing. Because like we talked about earlier, you're doing more with okay, there goes Anita. And Anita's back now. You're doing more with so much less. I don't know how you guys did, especially with Hagstrom maps. There wasn't even GPS back then. I would have died.
Oh, it was. So you take a Handstrom against your subway map,
Hmm.
and you would learn the streets and roadways to get to the subway. And because we were never able to make it up to the Bronx, because if you'd have 2 trucks covering the entire city, and that's normally what transit put out, you'd have one covering Brooklyn and Queens, you'd have the other covering Manhattan and the Bronx. So if you're in Midtown and you have a man under at the far end of the Bronx, you're not going to make it. Just unless it's a Saturday afternoon and there's no traffic. So when is that? That's never. So when John Bushing and myself used to work, we used to sit right by the Willis Avenue Bridge. We sit just on the other side of the Bronx, and we were actually picking up Bronx jobs at that point.
Hmm.
We were able to get to them. Like, guys would be like, how'd you get here?
Well,
Well, but yeah, that's what, a big brother, ESU, didn't realize that we only put out 2 trucks a tour.
that was
Because we were like this. Remember the old commercial for Channel 7? There's that news van again.
yeah.
There's
It's a
that
good-
transit truck again. There they are again. And we had our rivalries, so to speak, with ESU prior to the
I've
merge.
heard.
There was a lot of
I've heard.
shenanigans.
Well, yeah. Shenanigans. That's a good way to sum it up. But it's funny because Joe said told me this off the air, and this is not anything confidential. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it. Obviously, Joe said's coming on the show next month, so I'm very excited about that.
Joe said it.
Yeah. Joe's, yeah. When somebody told me that was his last name, I'm like, "Are you kidding?" He's like, "Nope, said.
Nope.
It's spelled differently. It's SEDE." But it's
Yeah,
I
but
can only
that was a
imagine.
running joke. Joe said
Yeah.
that.
Sergeant said, but anyway, he was telling me that we couldn't, when we were forming it in 1977, because he was there since the beginning, of course, up until his retirement in '94. We couldn't call it emergency service. We had to call it medical rescue. And it's amazing to see how the unit evolved, because originally it was that somebody would have a heart attack on the train or they would pass out. You'd have to
Correct.
get them off the train and get them up so that the train wouldn't stop moving. And then you get the person the help that they need. But
Correct.
what you guys were doing, I remember a video that came out in like '94, right before the merge hit. And it was basically a 20-minute video highlighting all the good transit was doing. And you guys were climbing the bridges, because people don't realize when they think of transit, you're thinking, oh, the subway, that's part of it. There were certain things above ground, and you saw this with EMRU, that was within your territory. So
Yep.
it gave you a wide gambit of things to do, all the way from Manhattan to Queens to Brooklyn to the Bronx.
As long as there was a train crossing that bridge, we were allowed on it. Let's just leave it at that. That's part of the shenanigans.
There you go.
But I remember now, my father, as I said, was a dock builder. And my father helped build the Verrazano Bridge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
He went up in the 60s with whatever the video camera was back then, which was 8mm film. Mm-hmm. And he filmed at different times of the year. 2 of his brothers worked on that bridge because they were iron workers. My father, dock builder by trade. Mm-hmm. And I saw videos of that bridge being built as a kid. He would take out the old reel-to-reel projector and we would watch it. And it was really cool. They originally walked on cyclone fence. When the towers got up, they walked on cyclone fence.
That's crazy.
Yes. The cable wheel ran for 6 months, day and night. As the cable wheel passed by, whoever was there had to grab it and put it under the bundle. So I remember being all excited when I finally climbed the Brooklyn Bridge. And I come home and I go, Dad, I climbed the Brooklyn Bridge today. My father looked at me straight-faced and said, it's the smallest bridge in the city, honey. Talk to me when you climb something bigger.
Keeps you humble. Keeps you honest.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Dad. Sadly, when I finally had the opportunity to climb the Verrazano Bridge, it meant so much to me. My father was no longer alive.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So, but 9 truck, I got to tell you, the guys in the issue did a nice, they showed up. I had guys from the unit show up. So it was a nice send off for my dad. But I wish he was alive, because for me, climbing the bridge, having seen all the intricacies from that old tape of my dad, to me was really just, it was cool. It was the coolest thing until I climbed the GW.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it, because there was an instance one time, and part of me wants to do this, and part of me is like, you're Mike Colón, don't do it. And that's not because I think I'm bigger than everybody. It's just because I'm a sissy cat. So I have to remind myself, you are a sissy cat, so stay your feet on the ground. But when it comes, there was a story John Lampkin told me one time where he was like, I think it was the GW, and they were up there for 4 hours. And he was looking around. I think it was a beautiful spring or summer day. And he's like, man, this is some view. I'm like, how could you be thinking that? I'd look down, I'd crap my pants. But you guys did it with, listen, well, you're tied in, you have a bunch of equipment. It makes it easier.
Confidence in your equipment. That's the whole reason behind the training. That's
Yep.
the whole reason of bringing you up the bridge, so that the first time you have to do that, it's not the first time you're up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To understand the shortcomings, to understand your anchor points. My background specialty was ropes. So, the top of the Brooklyn Bridge is, I believe it's granite, and it's really slick when it's wet. There's a 45-degree beveled edge. So don't go near the edge. Know where to tie off. Know how to get somebody down.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are all things that you kind of want to know before you get up there. They had the one guy, I don't know if Dave Norman, I forget who was on the job. It was the 59th Street Bridge. The guy was like Spider-Man. And we had to change. Every time we got him, he just took off again. But we had to change our teaching within ropes. We had to show you how to lead climb, because at that point, if we were belaying you and letting you out, well, if you grab the guy, you would pendulum swing. What's stopping you from that 15, 20 feet of rope that we now have you on? If you grab the guy and fall, you're going to go down 15, 20 feet. So we had to start showing the guys how to lead climb, how to attach themselves to a point. So it's not a 20-foot drop, it's a 3-foot drop, because they're secured in at the one point that they tied themselves into. So it became, again, as jobs evolve, you see things that you have to address. And that's good. It's good rescue work. You have to critique the job. What went well, what went right, what could have been improved upon, what don't we ever do again? Right. You always critique a job. And excuse me, Mike Curtin, God rest his soul, he was great at that. He was very much, because Mike was in the unit as a cop, got promoted, went to 2 truck, great boss. Mm-hmm. But he was all about training on a Sunday like we used to do, and training in the area in which you're working, because it's not the same as training at Floyd Bennett Field. Okay, I'm learning the basics there in a controlled environment, but that's not where I'm working. I'm not diving in Jamaica Bay, I'm diving in the East River. It's a little different. That's a little different.
Yeah,
so,
I can imagine.
Yeah, the currents there, and that's when I was in shape, and I thought I was swimming, and I wasn't going anywhere.
It's humbling. It's humbling.
It is, because everything's at the time I didn't have any communications. Everything was a rope pull. So I got Eddie O'Neill, who was the dive master at the scene, and I'm trying to swim, and I'm trying to keep the rope taut. I'm fighting against the current. I'm swimming into the current. It just came to a point where I was no longer swimming. I'm just grabbing myself along the bottom. There is zero visibility. All I'm doing is kicking up more murk, and I'm going, when am I going to get the pull to turn around? I remember I crawled into, my head hit something, and I go, would those idiots let me crawl into a piling? Yeah, they would. So now I'm like
Jesus.
trying to figure out what this thing is. It's black as night, and it's a cinder block. I felt it through the shape. You got the cinder block. It's got the two holes. It's a cinder block, up and over, and then I kept going. And then finally, I got the pull to turn around. I'm like, oh my god, thank God! It's like 2 strokes, and they got me turning around again. Damn it! I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, that's another moment where I'm like, again, and I don't know. And I respect the heck out of you guys for doing it because, again, going back to the episodes of Cops, Kenny Winkler had a dive job. Mike Core was on it too.
Mhm.
And Kenny just comes out nonchalantly and he still talks the same way, which is hilarious. It's like, yeah, the guy was looking
Kenny's
for
great.
oil.
I loved Kenny.
It's like 10 o'clock at night. You can barely see. It's the lights of the buildings that are essentially serving as your light at that hour. It was an EDP. And he just pulls them out. I was like, yeah, the guy was looking for oil. And Kevin Kushner was telling me when he was on the show that Kenny loved doing that. I'm like, how do you love something like that? It's not clean water. It's dirty. You'll come out like a radioactive supervillain in
I
Batman.
did. I came out black.
Jesus.
Crap on me. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but get it off.
Oh my God. My God. Yeah, and Mike Curtin, quick story on that, because there's somebody that I had on the show last year that worked under him when he was a sergeant in Queens before he got back to ESU. He would do the Marine thing where instead of jumping over a fence like feet first to go chase after somebody, he'd dive head first and do the tuck and roll, get up and keep going. So I'm just picturing that. It just makes me laugh. But yeah, no, a lot of people have said that Mike was great with training like that. You know,
Mike was just spectacular. And it was funny because the next day he says to me, Anita, so what'd you think of training? And I was reluctant to be honest because boss that has said, you can be honest with me, I end up walking a punishment post. So the last time I gave somebody my honest opinion, I was actually
not that honest.
Right. You asked me your opinion. I said to be a little more assertive. I'm walking a punishment post for a week. So I said, you're not going to make me walk a punishment post? Because, again, it's military, different attitude. He goes, no, absolutely not. It's the worst I've ever had. I couldn't, I had a hard time equalizing. I had zero visibility. I said, I said it was very disorientating down. He goes, yeah, I didn't think training went that well either. So we're going to redo this another day. But you do ropes, so we're going to do ropes next week.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good common sense boss. Sounds like him.
And the funny thing is before we had tripods, if we needed a high point to get into a location, we actually there was a specific way to tie the extension ladder to the back bumper. You put the ladder onto the back bumper, and then you angled it so you could have a high point. And that, in an emergency, that was our initial tripod. That was a high point. And that's what we did. Yeah, we had a close point up the FDR drive. We backed the REP up to the edge, got the ladder off, tied the ladder on, down you go.
Could have given this to the tech execs. You guys could have made a lot of money. Steve Jobs was alive back then. He could have taken that, listen. Yes. Yeah. Key inventors, emergency service cops in New York City. And around this time, technology is evolving too, because, you went to 2 truck for a little bit. Well, you were in 3 for a little while. And I have to ask you this because any guy that worked in 3 or 4 or gal, Yankee Stadium, 1996. Well, 95, they get back to the playoffs. They go toe-to-toe with Seattle. Then 96 is the World Series run. Did you have any details during those playoff games that stick out?
Junior girl doesn't get those assignments.
Ah, yeah, that's true. You were new back then.
You don't get that until you
just got into ESU. Right.
And then when you get the sniper post, it's even better.
Yeah.
You're not the hazmat detail walking around the stadium. You're sitting behind the lights.
Right.
When no one sees you.
Of course. There's a picture, and I hate him so much for this, and I say that lovingly because I want him to come on the show. But I hate him for this at the same time. Pete Segretti has a picture of him during the 2009 World Series. I'm a big Yankee fan, and I am very disappointed this year, to say the least, where it's him on a sniper post, and I could see Mark Teixeira getting ready to hit in the background. I'm like, you jerk. Do you know the things I would do to trade places with you for that post for one night? Would I shoot anybody? No, I probably missed by 15 feet, but that's not the point. I want that post. So you guys had it good. And the bomb squad guys, too, let me tell you, same thing. Richie Teamsma told me a few stories like that where he's like, yeah, we'd be in the stands.
I actually worked with Richie before I retired and after I retired.
Oh, yeah. He was in DHS for a while, too. Shout out to Richie.
Yes.
He's been on the show for my Bomb Squad miniseries. Great guy, hilarious guy. Yeah, did a great. I think he was an 8 truck before he went to the Bomb Squad in
Yes,
'93.
yes.
Yeah.
I used to say, Richie, I bet your neighbors don't piss you off and are very concerned when you go into your garage and just close the door. But, go back to the 14th Street job.
Uh-huh.
When I spoke with Richie goes, that was a long day. We had to x-ray every package that was left, every box that was left on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So,
hang on, when was this? Just to stop you real quick, was this '94 when Leary put the firebomb on the 4 train, or was it something else?
No, it was the 4 train. No,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Union Square. The Union Square bomb.
Oh, Union Square, yeah, 91.
Every person that fled, every person that left, they left their stuff. They left their bags. They just ran up. Everything that was left had to be x-rayed by the bomb squad.
Yeah, that's God.
Yeah, ask Richie about that. He said it was a long, long day.
There's jobs like that, and then especially just a quick aside during the for anybody that's watched my Bomb Squad shows, you see this in the opening, and I asked him about this, and it's just not fun. There was a bomb job in the subway. I'm trying to make out who the ESU guys that were helping the guy put on the suit were. I can't make them out, but they were there. It's like 95 degrees outside. They were shooting a documentary with New York City EMS before they emerged with the FDNY, and they caught this job. And poor Danny Richards, who sadly ended up getting killed on 9/11, great detective by all accounts and great guy. Yeah. He takes off the suit and he's just sweating. So same thing with those guys. I don't know how they do it. And I don't know how you guys do it either. Because those black uniforms are cool. They're comfortable. But man, you must sweat to death in those during the summer months.
We wanted to know who the brain surgeon was that pulled us out of the powder balloons and gave us this black suit in the middle of the summer.
Bratton.
But, oddly enough, I was teaching in SDS, and I was approached by a couple of guys from the bomb squad to go to the bomb squad. And I turned it down for personal reasons, and I turned it down because I didn't want to take a spot away from someone that could go through everything. My intention was to retire in 20. I had less than 5 years. You're not even up to speed in 5 years in the bomb squad. So I'm not about to take training away from someone else. If my health didn't start to decline, yes, I would have. If my lungs weren't giving out, if I didn't feel that, if I felt that I could have, I would have. And one of the sergeants there, Tony Biandiello.
Oh, great guy. I love him. He's been on. He was on the show last month. The Energizer Bunny on crack.
I don't want to tell you how I met him.
Well, now you have to tell me. So, unless you don't want, you can tell me off the air. Oh boy.
I have to. Okay, so what we were doing was we were trying to figure out. We wanted to explode things to see what the scatter pattern would be. Like who would be hit, who would not be hit, what would the shrapnel do? So I forget which boss it was, but he says, go to the store, see if you can get some mannequins. Okay, so I'm like walking, hey, can I have your mannequin? They're just looking at me like I'm out of my mind. So anyway, we're down at the back end of the range, and like we're blowing things up, and I'm like, all right, this is great. And the last ride is Tony B, and there's no room in the gator. So I just looked at him and I said, oh, I know that there's room. And he just goes, where? And I jumped in his lap. If you know me, that's not unusual. And yeah, it's facing him.
Jeez.
So that is pretty much when Tony B fell in love with me.
Okay.
And Tony and I worked the DHS program later on. Yeah, but I would run into him on jobs, and it was always, it's like when you see certain people show up, that if it's a good job, they're gonna rent, but if it's not, they're not gonna drag it out.
Right.
We had a job. I was with Lee Elliott one night. We just got out of 10 truck. We got a call in Long Island City, the Citibank building, which is made out of glass.
Yes.
Bombs and glass
don't go together.
A good combo.
No.
So the security guard is waiting outside for us. What do you got? He goes, I was making my rounds. UPS made a delivery. The boxes are past my desk to the left. He goes, all of a sudden, one of them started ticking. So I'm trying not to laugh now. I'm going, ticking? He goes, yeah, it wasn't ticking 20 minutes ago. It's ticking now. Oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So me and Lee walk in. As soon as we turn, you can hear this thing ticking. Me and Lee are like, it's ticking. So we figure out which box it is. And we get the bomb squad there. And the bomb squad, the same thing. They see guys from the issue. All right, what do you got? I go, security saw it says that UPS made a delivery. All the boxes are nicely stacked. And the boxes started ticking. And the bomb squad guy goes, ticking? I said, yeah, ticking. I said, don't laugh. It really is ticking. I said, 3 rows down. When you're looking at it from the left, 4 boxes in. So he goes in and he comes out. He goes, yeah, it's ticking, all right. It was a bit, yeah, it's ticking. He x-rays it. You know what it is? It's a metronome.
Oh, they'll tick. Yeah.
Right through the box. I'm like, okay, that's good.
Yeah, at least.
But that was just one of the weirdest. How do you know it's a bomb? The box is ticking. Box is ticking? Ticking. Oh, yeah. And like you could see the guy smoking. No, it's ticking. I'm like, oh, okay. And then, like I said, just me and Lee looked at each other. Oh, it's ticking.
Fair enough.
Bomb squad, it's ticking? Yeah, it's ticking.
It's to curb your enthusiasm, Skip, but it's real life.
Yes.
It's real life.
Ticking. Hey, Lee, this is going to suck if it goes off because there's glass everywhere. You know that, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's going to be like that scene, except magnified times 10 in Beverly Hills
Yes.
Cop, where security threw Eddie Murphy through a window.
Yes.
Except it's a bomb going off. So there was a job you had in 3 Truck, real quick, that you were telling me off the air about, and I didn't want to forget to ask you about this. It was a domestic that ended with a suicide, but this was pretty crazy. Tell me about this one.
Hey, Steve Stefanakis, you on the air?
I think he is.
I was at Steph on that job.
I forgot he was in 3 Truck. Yeah, before he went to 10.
So it was Home Street, Hone. There's also a Home Street. So he and I go to the job. Cops put it over. I really wasn't that familiar with the Bronx at that point. And we hear the precinct. Precinct is home. We hear the shots going off in the background. He and I pull up. We're suiting up. We're waiting for the truck. And the truck was going to Home Street, not home. So I looked at Steph, and Steph looked at me, and we made a decision that we would see what's going on. And we didn't have M4s at the time or mini 14s. We only had a shotgun. And that's not really kind of what you're supposed to do. But again, transit guy, housing guy, what do? We come up with a game plan because we've always had, more with less. So I got the shotgun and I go, Steve, this guy pokes his head out. Just get behind me as fast as I can because I'm lighting him up. He goes, no worries. The lady, the wife was shot and she was right in the vestibule, right by the doorway. So our plan was open the door, let him just try to grab her out so we can get her medical aid. And that's why I said, if this guy just dropped her, he already had done himself. We didn't realize. So we open the door and we get her out. No shots fired. The truck goes in. The truck finally gets there and we see the guy. It's suicide. He suicided himself. He thought he must have killed his wife. And that's how that kind of ended. It was against the issue rules. And you had one guy from transit and one guy from housing, and the senior guy was not happy with what we did, though.
Did she live, the wife?
What?
Did she live?
Yes.
Okay, at least she lived. Well, who cares about him? He's dead, but at least she made it.
Yes. But yeah, it was. The senior officer was not happy with what we did.
Yes. Well, listen, the statute of limitations has run out, so you're okay.
There
at
you
least
go.
we hope, we think, we pray.
No, I was told if I ever pulled a stunt like that, I'd go back for retraining. I said, well, maybe you should go to Home Street, not home.
You saying that to him? Never. I would never suspect something like that. Well, Yeah, for those of you that are going to listen to this episode, I'm so sorry for you because you're missing some classic facial expressions tonight that can only there's some key context that you'll be missing because the facial expressions that my guest is making is some of the greatest that have ever been made on this show, and they're only adding to the stories. So your loss, for those of you out there that'll listen to this, and you know who you are. Much love to you, but still, in 90 from 97 to 2000, I believe, right before you went to 10, you had 6 months in the A team. I'll ask you about that too, but you were in two truck primarily. And I was asking guys about this because I was down there last week for the breakfast with Anta Tukovic, Seth Gar, and the like for the 9/11 ceremony. John DeLara was there, and him and Paul Hargrove around that time rewrote the operations manual for the RMI. And as you know from working with him, that was John's baby. He was the master of it alongside Sergeant Hargrove.
John slept with the RMI.
There's so many pictures of him with it. And the beginning of Cops, when they filmed with the NYPD, you could see him driving it. You know, he loved that thing. So he would
John,
teach guys.
I really, we really thought he had a relationship with that thing.
So did you ever take a one-on-one class with him? Because he would teach everybody in two truck how to use it. Tell me about that.
He never wanted me in his class again. You can't put transit guys in a room alone. We're just
robots.
We do things in the camera.
Well, this has been a great podcast. Well,
I'm trying to keep it clean.
I know you are. Well, that's
you're just trying to make the best of the worst situations. If it's boring, you try to have fun. You try to teach through laughter.
Right.
Because if you become relaxed, you kind of, there's a time to laugh and giggle and there's a time to not. Mm-hmm. So when you have the opportunity to laugh and giggle, you laugh.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, John and his robot, there's something going on there.
I would have loved to get him on the show. I know I would have laughed. Everybody tells me he was so funny.
He was. He told me about a job one time. I don't know if it was true or not. I think it was in one truck. They were at a high rise for some job because I ended up working with John a lot. Mm-hmm. And he says, yeah, the lady had a little dog and he was engaged with talking with the woman and the partner was bouncing a ball and apparently he bounced it over the balcony and the dog followed the ball.
Aw.
Yeah, and he goes, okay, we have to go now. Yeah. John was interesting. Yeah. And you had to see John knew Arnold Schwarzenegger because John was a.
Oh, that's right. He was a bodybuilder. Yeah.
He was a bodybuilder back in the day, and I actually saw a picture before he lost all this weight, and it's like John's body on somebody else's head. But no, John was a great cop. John was a really good guy. John was patient. He explained things, and he was in the issue long enough that he knew what to do.
Yeah, no, he got there. Well, I think he was a transit cop for a brief time too before he rolled over. Worked in the 4-6 in the Bronx with my buddy Dan McNally, another former bomb squad guy. And then in '87 is when he got to ESU, and yeah, that's when he went to two truck. Well, he worked in 3 for a little bit as well, but he was in two truck because he was a Bronx guy. And there's a hilarious. This is when A&E did a special on you guys, 1999, 2000. It used to be on YouTube. They pulled it for copyright. I wish A&E itself would upload it. But there's a jumper job. Vinny Dance is on this one too. And this guy, he's coked out literally. He's on coke and marijuana at the same time. He's running back and forth. Vinny's just waiting him out.
I don't know whether to be high or
he's in his underwear. And Vinny
impressive.
and Vinny's just looking at him like, okay. And then they pan to John and they're not interviewing him. They just pan to John looking up at him. And John's just so over it. He's just like, I felt bad. And they end up getting the guy down. But yeah, that's a guy that, my goodness, the stories he could have told. Now, A-Team's interesting because I have met you and I say this with love. You are tiny. When we talked with love, tinier than me at least. I'm 5'8". So you're probably a few inches shorter than me. 5'6". All right. So a couple inches shorter than me. But, me and John Latanzio were talking to you, and then you brought up the fact that when you were on the A-Team, you had the lead bunker for a while, which is the first one through the door, which is interesting to me, given the fact that that is a unique position to have. And also, usually you would think, oh, give it to a bigger person. You took care of it, girl. So tell me about that.
Part of when you team up with bunker and MP5, you want the shorter person to have the bunker. So the taller person can shoot over your head.
Makes sense.
So Tommy Urban took a chance, put me on lead bunker, and it was like home. And they, I remember Joe Zogby telling me, hey, Anita, once that door opens, your job is to go as far and deep into that apartment as you can and just knock everything over to get. And that's what I would do. Once the door was open, it was game on. You know, you learn from training. I turned my head once in training and I got shot. So I never turn around to see if my partner's with me. My partner should communicate, my MP5 guy, if he's with me or not. I'm not turning around anymore. My focus is a little viewport. So once the door opens, I'm in. And there'll be communication from the second bucket team. Anita, I got it. Go. I got this one. I got this door, so that I could do. So there was communication in that respect. But once that door opened, we were in. And I had 2 occasions when I was on the A team where, and this was funny, we always had the precinct or whoever was running the job point to the door. So there was no mistake. We didn't have to figure out the door. Precinct or whoever requested us, that's the door. Okay. And again, you provide cover for the entry team. Twice, I've had the person inside open the door, not realizing we were outside.
Right.
So the team isn't set to go. We're not quite stacked up yet. We're kind of getting ourselves together. We're squaring off on the door. Door opens. Okay, I'm in. Literally, I remember one guy was going, what do you want on that pizza? Okay. Pizza Express. And I don't turn around. I go in. So I'm hoping to get feet behind me. And then like all of a sudden they're like, oh, snap.
Thank you for catching yourself. Thank you.
And then I finally hear the feet, you know, but other than that, I don't, it's just once the door's open, I'm in. That's my primary job. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to protect my team.
Makes sense, of course.
Yeah.
That's country star Joe Zogby to you, by the way. You know, lest we forget, music star, future Hollywood Walk of Fame,
Joe wanted
Zogby.
to be a rock star way back when. I know him.
Oh yeah.
Joe and I, Joe will always introduce me as I work with her in ESU, and she's the real deal.
Oh yeah. Well,
because like you put, it doesn't look like it. But when you piss me off, all bets are off.
I have a hard time
the whole other side comes out.
Me personally, I am shocked that you would potentially go off on someone when you're pissed off. No, of course.
I had an issue. Seriously, I'm only here 4 years. I had an issue with my neighbor. His kid wants to shoot squirrels on my property. I feed my squirrels. I don't know where the transition happened. I'm just a country girl now. So I said, hey, listen, don't shoot the squirrels. And as I'm driving out, he cocks his air gun, he shoulders it. I drive back and I just look, now I'm pissed off. The night before, that night, they started up a chainsaw at 1:30 in the morning to cut firewood. Now, if you work midnights long enough, yes, thank you. Out here, when it's cool, they have fire pits and everybody sits around the fire pit. Well, if you run out of firewood, then your evening should be over. But they decided to start up a chainsaw. So I wasn't really happy because I wasn't feeling well and I need to sleep if I don't feel well. So now I'm already annoyed because I didn't sleep well and now this kid's shooting on my property. So I said, didn't I just tell you? Because now the cop came out. I said, didn't the girl across the street just tell you? So some other guy comes out and the gentlemen down here in Florida aren't used to an aggressive woman. So I said, I don't know who you are, but get back in your house. So finally the owner comes out and he goes, what's all this ruckus? I go, look, I told your kid not to shoot squirrels on my property. I said, you shoot squirrels. I said, you know, I'm just trying to be nice. I said, I asked him nicely. I said, I don't know, somebody starts a chainsaw at 1:30 in the morning. I said, what's that all about? And then I explained a few other things on why he is the jerk of the block. And he just kind of looked because I got right in his face and he expected me to back down. I said, dude, I'm not backing down. I don't know what you're used to. I said, but let me explain something to you. I have worked with the biggest bunch of jerks for 20 years, and you are not going to out-jerk me. I said, so, having worked midnights for 8 years, I have a 3-foot Marshall amp. I would be more than happy to plug my electric guitar in and start at about 2 in the morning on a Wednesday when you have to work. And I will play the Star Spangled Banner until 6.
Maybe a little Eric Clapton in there too, you know, Layla, why not?
Along with the 10,000 lumen light that I'm going to put on your side of the house.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was enough to get him to calm down, shall we say?
we finally make friends.
Well, good. Good. I forgot to
But
mention, by
he's
the way.
the only one. Everybody else on the block, I have no problems with.
Oh, there you
They
go.
call me when they need a hand. They call me neighborhood watch.
There's always that one person in the neighborhood. There's always that one person. It's
The
just
old Italian lady. That was the original security lights back in the day. The old Italian lady on the pillow. She was neighborhood watch.
or Puerto Rican. Because let me tell you,
And I'm going to say every nationality had it.
Yep.
There was a Spanish lady. There was the old Chinese lady.
Mhm.
There was the old black woman. Everybody had one. And if you screwed up, your parents knew before you got home.
Mm-hmm.
So when your mom said to you, "Do you want to tell me what happened today?" Don't even think about lying.
Yep. My late abuelita was that way, and God, do I miss her. She was fun because I used to join her in these escapades as a 6 or 7-year-old. She would sit at the window, and she knew everybody's business, everyone's business.
That's the way it was back then.
If the cops wanted to know something, they would, just go to her. She would have all the information from the 4th floor window. I could still see her sitting there now, just peering out, knowing your entire backstory, everything you did, everything you didn't do.
But
Yeah.
that's like you said, growing up in Queens.
Mhm.
Everybody knew each other.
Mhm.
Every parent knew whose kid, who was doing what. And if you did something, if you were on somebody's property, if you were disrespectful, your mom knew before you got home.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes, yeah. Of course, you'd rather have if you're a kid that's worth his weight and actually respects his parent, you'd actually rather go to jail than go home to your mom. In some instances, I know I would. I would beg them to take me to jail as opposed to coming home.
I when you didn't have ID in the subway, we used to ask your name, where you live, blah blah, and then we'd have a conversation. We'd ask you the same information again. So I had related this to my older sister. There's a 12-year age gap between myself. She's the oldest. I'm the youngest. So I said, well, after we get the information, we get a phone number. We call home to verify the information. And my sister turned 4 shades of white. She goes, "You called her parents?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Could you imagine us getting a phone call? We begged them to take us to jail. Just take me to jail." So yeah, it's and how drastically things have changed.
Oh yeah.
Now kids are just in your face, like, and yeah, call home.
Yeah.
Call home. No, don't call home.
No, that. You want me to do 5 to 10? Sure. As I look to my left and my mother's giving me a death stare. Sure. By the way, I forgot to mention Jeff Dito says hi. He's in the chat.
Hey, Jeff.
So, no, I wanted to get Jeff on the show. He says he's shy, and that's fine, but glad you're watching tonight, Jeff.
He's a very quiet gentleman.
Yes, I've heard. Now, just quickly touching on it, this was a tough time for ESU. We just passed 22 years with the 14 losses on September 11th, 2001. I mean, you knew pretty much all these guys, some better than others, but all of these guys. So we don't have to talk about that day. I don't want to make it somber, but just looking back on each of these guys, I don't know if we have time to go through all of them, but collectively, what are some funny memories of each of them that stick out? Because each of them brought something different to the unit, and each of them, especially working in 10 truck at the time with Tom Langone and Paul Talty, they were larger than life characters.
Vig.
Oh yeah.
When we finally found, like I said, I think I had told you this story. When we finally got, they found part of Vig. They found his little hockey tattoo on his calf. I believe it was with Joe Nicolo. Joe Nicolo was a cop. Actually, Joe lives not far from here. And Joe said, "We're paying our respects." So we ended up going, and like I said, his father gave us more comfort than we were able to give his parents. And his father's like, "Can you write a story about, Joe? And I'm going to put it in a book for his kids when they grow up." And I just couldn't think of a clean one to tell him. But Joe was a character and a half. Curtin, he comes up one day. Curtin says, "I need somebody to do a day tour with Vig." Vig walks in with a pocket protector and buck teeth. And I just looked at him. I said, "I'm working with him." And Curtin goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'll be right back." So I go into my locker and I come out with the eyes that fall out. So I walk into there and I go, "Okay, we're ready." And just Mike is like, I don't, just go. Mike is just go. Mike Curtin, we were doing, it was either UN General Assembly or the US Open, because they're back to back. I think it was the UN. So you're working round the clock. So I'm braiding my hair. I'm getting ready for the tour. And Mike comes in, doesn't realize that I'm in the lunchroom. Mike comes in his underwear, comes in with his boxer shorts. And he still doesn't realize that I'm there. And, Mike was very pale, white hair. So I'm braiding my hair and I go, Sergeant Curtin, my husband says, because my husband was in the unit, my husband says, boxer shorts keep him very cool down there. Do you find that to be the same? And I'm watching the embarrassment come up the back of his head. And he doesn't know what to do with himself at this point. And he goes, yes, Anita, it does. Okay, good to know. And I leave because the next day I buy him Joe Box's silky with a happy face on it. And I put him on his locker.
Jesus.
Yeah. So Joe Cassio is now walking the hallways going, why he has to ask me? Why I'm the one he has to ask? I said, Joe, what's the matter? He goes, why does Curtin ask me if I have thong underwear somewhere? Why would I have thong underwear? And I go, Joe, it's not your fault. It's my fault. I said, don't even ask. But Mike was trying to get back. And he just, it was just funny. And then fast forward, rest his soul, McCardle. John McCardle, who we just lost. John used to sleep over at the A-team. And I walk into the A-team. And Joe Zogby's there. He's making coffee. And I couldn't understand why. Joe goes to me, good morning, Miss Nita, like really loud. I'm like, okay, Joe, good morning to you too. Figuring McCardle would hear it. McCardle didn't hear it. So I go into the bathroom, I put my uniform on. McCardle's now got a blanket around him and he's wearing bikini skin underwear, leopard skin underwear. And he's signing in the log. So I come up, I go, good morning, Lieutenant McCardle. And and the embarrassment is starting. I go, those are some mighty swell underwear you have on. He's just like, you couldn't tell me she was here? Zogby goes, I couldn't yell her name any louder, Lou. So, P.S., you know what he got on his locker the next day, right? Silky underwear. This would be better, Lou, this would be better than those leopard skin bikinis that you had on. I'm scarred. John Malauer we spoke about.
Yeah.
John was a great guy. Tommy Langone was, if you could put an ESU chip, that was his brain. And Paul Talty was new in the truck. I was working midnight. Sometimes you don't really get to know everybody when you work in the midnights.
Yeah.
But Tommy Langone, and again, he was one of the set of brothers that were lost.
Yep. His brother was in FTNY Squad 52.
Yeah.
That's I forgot about that. Yeah.
Vinny Dance, I worked with him in Jury Truck, good cop. Wally Weaver, another good guy. Mm-hmm. Sergeant Coughlin.
Yep.
Just a big teddy bear. Just a big teddy bear, Ronnie Gillis. And Ronnie was a midnight boss. Mm-hmm. So, I talked to the pilot a lot saying, Rodney, just hold on. I got a bottle of Jack. He used to drink Jack Daniels. And, again, just not even a piece of him.
Yeah.
So, not easy. Not easy.
I can imagine.
And for me, that cemetery crawl that we do on 9/11 was where I need to be. Since I'm down here, I haven't found a place to be yet. Haven't quite found a place to be, so I just stay busy.
Right.
And I usually like cut trees up or something. Let's get anger out, start the chainsaw up.
At 1:30 in the morning.
Not at 3 of them. No. So yeah, that day I just try to block out. It for me it starts around August. I kind of get down around August because my father's birthday was August. My mother died 5 days after my father's birthday. Mm-hmm. My best friend died. Her birthday was the beginning of September, and then I rolled into the 11th. So I had realized, took me a while to figure out why around August I started to get really depressed. I mean, I'd just be really happy, and then all of a sudden burst into tears. I'm like, man, what is wrong with you? Like, left side, right side brain arguing, like, what is wrong with you? Stop it. And then I'm like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on in the next, 4 weeks that you internalize. And that's what happens is you internalize it and then it just comes up at the weirdest times.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, I I feel that way too. It's funny you say that because like a couple of months ago, and Billy Kennedy saying this has been one of my best interviews, and I feel it is because and I say this in a good way. We've gone all over the place tonight, but it's felt, we've talked about everything, which I appreciate. Sometimes it's good to not necessarily go by a rigid outline, but as I'm wont to do sometimes. But my grandfather passed away a couple of months ago
I'm
in
sorry.
July. Thank you.
Sorry for your lost love.
Thank you. He was 86 years old, had dementia for about 10 years there. So it was
Oh,
a tough struggle. But that same week, it's ironic because months prior, I was working towards getting my first car, right? I'm 23 years old. COVID pushed everything back. I'm working towards getting the car. And that same week, I literally found out the same day I was getting my first car. Got the call from my mother 10:30 in the morning. Congratulations, we're gonna get it this Monday. 2 hours later, she calls me to tell me he died. And that same week, I go get the car and we're prepping for his funeral. And like I told you off the air, I work at a firehouse. So says, Lieutenant, this week is just kicking my butt. I don't know if I want to be
mhm.
happy or I don't know if I want to cry. And he says,
Just
hey, he says,
run
listen,
with it. Roll with it.
it's exactly what he said. And he says, listen, it's okay to feel both. There's no rules. There's
Yep.
no rules. And I tell you the same thing. How you process it, hey, there's no rules
And
to it.
when it seems to pop up, I've spoke to you about Andy. Andy we lost
Andy
not
Strunk.
on 9/11, but and that's been one of the hardest
Yeah.
because, as I said, Andy and I spoke every day, and Andy was gone for a while, and it didn't really hit me because he loved to eat, and I always like if I got a really good, pretty plate of food, I would send him a picture. You know? And I remember I was a place here. It was called Paris in Town. So they have these nice little, you know, Parisian dishes, and it was just so pretty. And I go, let me take a, and that's when it hit me that I couldn't take pictures for Andy anymore. So
Yeah.
it just and now here I am. I'm in the middle of a restaurant, and I'm going, all right, don't cry, don't cry,
Yeah.
don't cry, don't cry. And then I drank a little bit of wine and took a couple of breaths, and I said, okay, Andy, this is for you.
Yeah.
So once I get past that, then I literally will talk to him like he's here.
Yeah. No, listen, it's the same
You
thing
know,
to a degree with me and my grandfather because nothing was sacred with him. This man took nothing serious. Like,
nope.
oh, I can't wait to joke with my grandfather. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. So it's those it's weird, but you know what? You get through it. What's the old song with a little help from our friends?
Yeah.
You get through it. So that's
Yep.
true. You got a good support system and we're both blessed with that. So I got by this point you had more time. So, and I didn't realize the proximity until I went down there for a ball game in June, courtesy of Andy Burchad, who for some reason's not in the chat tonight, but he should be. Who I had Andy on the show back in,
Rashad.
yes, or Burchad. He says Burchad.
Okay, I'm not allowed to say this.
Uh,
He was one of my favorites.
well, you can say it now. It's 17 years.
Andy and Todd Sessa were in the same class together.
Oh, I've heard that name. I got to get Todd on the show.
Andy, I think Todd's in Tennessee now.
Okay,
winning all sorts of barbecue awards.
Okay,
but
because I'm a stalker, I'll find him.
But Bashad and him were in the same class, and they were two of my favorites.
Did you have Marty Duffy?
Oh, and by the way, if you get Andy on, ask him to do his Billy Kennedy imitation.
Oh, he's been on. Andy was on.
Has he done his Billy imitation?
I don't think he has.
He does a spot on Billy Kennedy imitation. Spot on.
I need to get him back on the show just for that. He was volume 31. And it's funny because like I said, I went down there courtesy because he has his big consulting company now. He's doing very well with that.
He's doing well with that. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, me too. And him and Dennis Canale, another ESU guy. And I went down to Citi Field for an event they were having with John Miller. And I walked up the street because I was trying to see Steph because Steph didn't tell me he wasn't working that day. So I go up to 10 Truck and I didn't realize 10 Truck was that close, but it's pretty freaking close.
Yes. Yeah.
So back then, when it was Shea across the street, you're at 10 Truck during the time when the Mets were actually not trash for a change and they were making those deep playoff runs, 2000s to Subway Series. Any Shea Stadium stories that you can tell?
No, not really.
Ah, dang it. Why?
No.
Why?
Not. I went as a kid. Only Shea Stadium's like stories I can tell you, or my dad. My dad used to bring me and my brother to Shea Stadium to watch the game, and my brother is still a diehard Mets fan.
My condolences.
That's what I say to him, and he goes, "No, there's hope." I'm like, Mario, come on.
Well, I know I'm a Knicks fan. So how do you think I feel?
It was funny because you know, things were different. My mother used to pack a lunch for my dad, and both my parents are gone, statute of limitations. My mother used to make him a highball, used to scotch and soda in a thermos. And he would drink his scotch and soda and eat his food while, of course, when you're with your father, you get to run the whole stadium and nobody looks for you because you could back then, you know, and dad was pretty toasty by the time. And he never had tickets in advance. He would always drive up, you know, box seats. If the box seats weren't available, we go home.
Hmm.
You know,
Wow.
never really, no stories, of, you know, other than that. I mean, I went with my girlfriends years later to a couple of games, but I never really was assigned there.
Ah, dang it. Because I'm like,
Sorry.
well, during that time, like I said, it's right down the street. So that we got, if time machines were real, we'd go back. And if I was in charge in ESU, I'd put you on those details. You know, we need to get Anita on those details. Put her back in ESU for a day and send her to Yankee Stadium or Citi Field. Because, and my goodness, the cast of characters you had in 10 Truck and 2, think about it too. Curtin, Vigiano, Delara, Politowski, Reyes, Keselowskis, and Nicasio. Then you go to 10, and then you got, I mentioned Langone and Talty. Stephanakis is there. Richie Winwood's there. And Glenn Klein on top of that. So,
And Glenn's partner was who? Richie Simon.
yes.
Okay.
Another guy I need to get on the show. Oh, my goodness.
First night I'm in 10 Truck. First night that I'm working in 10 Truck.
Mhm.
Glenn and Richie are partners. So I walk into 10 Truck and I go, hey, how are you? And Richie Simon looks me straight in the face and says, matter of time before we get one of yous here. And I just look at him and I go, one of these? You mean, hopefully this won't get you bounced off. I said, what? Something that bleeds for 5 to 7 days and still lives? Or if it wasn't for sex, you'd hunt us for sport. One of these. And he, yes. And he looks at me and he goes, you pit spitting hoe. And I go, you one-eyed wandering Jew. Richie's eye he's got a wandering eye.
Jesus.
Does Glenn have to do all the driving because you can only make left turns and drive like that? Right? So Richie just, come on back. Mike, where'd you go?
I had to compose myself.
So he goes, you're going to fit in fine here.
And you did.
Forward, we're at a retirement dinner at Russo's on the Bay. I am dressed up. You don't recognize me when I'm really dressed up. Richie's in a suit. He's got bosses all around him. He sees me across the mezzanine area and yells out, pit spitting hoe. To which it was like Noah parting the Red Sea because all the bosses turned around and saw it was me. And they just, and I'm long stepping and I go, what I wondering you, come over here to me. And we're just hugging and kissing and they're all like, how did he get away saying that to her? But that we still greet each other like that. I mean, people just look at us like we're crazy. You know, it's
yeah. You can't understand it unless you're, you know,
right,
unless you're in
his
it.
birthday comes up. Love the one, and I, you know, love the pit spitting hoe. You know, it's just you have to. I always came in. Okay, we're a male dominated unit. I mean, short of you know, shaking your junk in my face. I'm not going to be offended because you're guys. I'm not asking you to change your whole world. Just accept me.
Right.
You know, just don't cross the line. Just accept who I am. I'm doing my best. And Richie once said to me, he goes, we liked you because you learned the right way. If I didn't know something,
compliment.
I'd say, show me. I don't, there's no harm. And I used to tell my students that when I was teaching. I said, there's no harm in saying, can you just go over this with me? It was one of the first pieces of equipment we used in STS school. I haven't had my hands on it in over a year. I said, there should be no harm in saying that. I said, ask if you don't know. The time to ask is not in the middle of the job. The time to ask is when you're inspecting the truck and you take that piece of equipment out and go, a little rusty. Let me figure it out. If I can't figure it out, ask your partner.
Right. That's good. That's true.
You know,
that's honest. Yeah.
And that was, you know, I related things like that to my students. If you don't know, ask. I said, I teach knots. I said, I still pick up rope once a month. I said, if I teach knots and pick up rope once a month, what should you do with a length of rope? Should you pick it up every day? Because when that time comes and the bell rings and you've got to tie the 8 and you've got to rappel and you got to lower someone, you have to be on point with those things. You can't be sitting there trying to, you know, figure it out. Pick it up, just play with it.
Right.
I mean, you're sitting in a truck for God knows how long, just play with it. You know?
Yep.
So that's just, you know, again, there were, I don't think I was that hard to work with. And again, I have a lot of respect for Richie because, Richie was like me. If Richie had a problem or if he heard something, he would ask me directly. I came into work one night, 10 truck, nobody's talking to me. Took a shower. He's with, I forget who he's with. I got John White as a supervisor. I'm driving the boss that night. Okay, chauffeur's got to inspect the truck, check on the vehicle, the long arms, make sure everything's accounted for, and do the chauffeur duties. So as I'm going down to the truck bay floor, I open the door, and Richie goes, well, I don't know. Why don't you ask her? I'm the only her in the truck. I said, ask her what? You making an EEO complaint? I said, who's making an EEO complaint? I said, what am I complaining about? Can you tell me? So he goes, you see, I told her she's not making a complaint. If you had a problem, Anita, you'd say something. I said, yeah, absolutely. You know me enough. So it was, and I don't know, at the time, I didn't know where the rumors were coming from. So I go upstairs and John White is typing the jobs in. And I know John White from transit. John used to do our time cards. And when you had to get called into John, it was like seeing the principal when your time card was wrong because he had the half bifocals and he used to look over them. So he's typing and all of a sudden he stops. I go, everything's good, boss. And he goes, Anita. And I go, Sarge, if I had a problem, I'd take care of it. I'm not making an EEO complaint. If I couldn't take care of it, I'd bring it to your attention. That's what I thought. Pushes his glasses up without missing a beat and goes back to typing. So I just, so, fast forward, I suspect who's starting this. So I asked my ex, I'm like, listen, this is what's going on. How do I handle it? I'm not going to be a chick. I'm not making an EEO complaint. How do I handle this? He goes, sit the squad down and then tell him. I pretty much know who it is. When I confirmed we're going to settle it the old issue way, which was to pull the truck out, drop the door, and fight it out on the truck bay floor. So I couldn't get everybody in because it was the summer. So everybody's on vacation. But I got half of the team that I suspected. So I go, listen, every time I leave for a weekend or I come back from vacation, somebody starts some crap about me. I said, if you have a problem or want to know what I'm doing, I said, you come to my face and you ask me. And then at that point, I look directly at the guy and I go, because I pretty much know who it is. After that, it stopped. My ex made a point to me and he said, Anita, they're screwed all around. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, if he doesn't take the challenge as an ESU cop, then he's a coward. But if he takes the challenge and he hits you, well, then he's a coward because he hit a girl. So he goes, and knowing who it is, you could probably hurt them. Like, all right, honey, you got a point. But it never got that far because, if I had a problem, I would say it to you. I'm not behind your back. I say it to you.
Right.
So that's just the way I've been.
No, and that's a good way to be, honestly. I was kind of raised the same way. I'm not that confrontational. I'm the kind of guy that, listen, I'll go as the peacekeeper, like, listen, what's going on? And growing up with two women in the house, my mom, my older sister, I had to be because it's pretty much the equivalent of being in emergency service and in the hostage negotiation team and in the bomb squad, living as I did. So that's pretty much where I'll say exactly what you did. What's the problem? How can we fix it?
I'm working at midnight. I'm with Horace Barlow. And Vinny Martinez and Ronnie Bauman are in the Atom car. Now, I don't know if Ronnie I worked with in transit. Vinny Martinez was a
housing rescue guy. I want him on the show. I can't find him.
It's hard to find him. We couldn't find him when he was working.
Jesus.
Termite. So anyway, I go downstairs, and in my locker room was downstairs on the truck bay. So I go down, and somebody tied my jacket in knots as a joke. And I thought it was Vinny because I didn't think Ronnie would do it. So they left their lockers open. So I proceed to take like a roll of duct tape or crime scene tape and I tape down Vinny's locker. Like it's now this big. And short of me, I was actually going to, because of the background rope, I was going to do a 4-to-1 and hang it from the ceiling. Ronnie comes in, he looks at me. And he sees what I'm doing, and he closes his locker, and I go, what's he doing that for? So they come in 3 o'clock, they drop their 3 a.m., they put their papers down, and Martinez comes behind me, and he hugs me, and he goes, Anita, I grew up with 4 sisters. I would never knot your clothes. I know better than that, having grown up with 4 sisters. I go, oh, okay. And I got up. He goes, where are you going? I said, to take off the roll and a half of tape I have on your locker. And then I just looked at Ronnie and I go, uh-huh. And he goes, oh, shit.
No, we can edit that one out. It's fine. We can edit that one out.
So,
Jimmy Scortis, who's a FDNY lieutenant, says about Vinny, he went federal. All right, so that makes sense. I guess
yes, he did. He did.
All right, so
He did.
Jimmy,
So,
and
yeah.
thanks for tuning in tonight, Jimmy. Like I said, he's a lieutenant with the New York City Fire Department. If you talk to Vinny, please give him my contact information because I've been trying to find the guy forever. I read about him in Sam Katz's book, the first, not the second one. Well, actually, both books. I have it right beside me here. The one that was the picture book in '95, and the other one that came out in '97. A couple more things because we're over an hour and a half, and I don't want to keep you that long. So, of course, you go through 9/11, then you go down to Floyd Bennett Field, where you were an instructor there for a while, which was fun because you got to teach the next generation, some of whom are still in ESU. You look at Tony Otero, you look at Marty Duffy. Andy was there for 20 years.
Not a whole lot of left because, believe it or not, I'm going to the retirement luncheons here in Florida, and some of the guys that I'm teaching are going to the retirement dinners. And the funny thing is that when you teach, you only know the name because all we see are the back of heads.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, so the name, I just have no idea what your face looks like because all I saw was your name and a blue helmet. So it's funny. I got a couple of guys that I taught that are down here now, but I've passed by the unit. There's no one I recognize. There's no one there that recognizes me anymore. You know.
Yeah, except for a handful of guys. Well, like Bobby Zajac or Greg Welch. You know, staff obviously.
Oh, Greg is still working. Oh my.
Yeah,
God.
Greg's in truck 1. I was hanging out.
He is. Trust me. Yeah.
I rode with Greg, Tommy Longa, and Chris Williams down to ESU Medal Day back in April. And one of the guys who's a sergeant in ESU when I was on the way back to Grand Central said, "You were in a car with Greg Welch, Tommy Longa, and Chris Williams?" I says, "Yeah."
And you survived?
The next line was, "You have my deepest sympathies."
You survived?
Yeah, Greg's interesting to say the least, but I love the guy. Jimmy also says, I worked jobs with Anita in Harlem. I'm EMS. I guess he was New York City EMS back then. Now he's FDNY EMS. So did you feel like, because like I said, you went to the Floyd Bennett Field around 2002. Do you feel that going down to the field and teaching these guys and gals was a way to kind of heal after 9/11? Was that something that helped you? Was it therapeutic at all?
So what happened? After we went into rescue mode and the job was coming to an end, I was on a warrant and I was lead bunker and the door opened up. And when you're behind the bunker, you have no peripheral vision.
Yeah, it's hard
you're just
to see.
looking out of this viewport.
Yeah.
So do you know those things you put your kid in that's got a wide wheelbase? Yeah, I got my
I've seen
foot
those.
stuck in.
Ooh, yeah, it's not comfortable.
And
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
trying to still proceed into the entry. And I'm trying to get my foot out of this. And I fell. And I actually partially tore the tendon off my bicep. So I was out for a little bit and then I was on limited and they had me delivering the mail on the midnight. And then rumor had it, they wanted to put me on the desk on day tours. No. I'd lose my night there. No. At the same time, John Bushing and myself, we came out of the same academy class, went to the same first command, got into transit rescue together. So, John's one of the 4 idiots. So we literally had our whole career together. So John is one of the instructors down at Floyd Bennett Field. And John says to me, listen, I know you like ropes. We have 2 more groups to get through in this class because it's usually 4 groups within a class. He goes, I have 6 people on my roster. I got 4 of them are retiring, or 3 of them are retiring, and then I think Franco Baraducci was getting promoted.
Right.
Because
to Ray Kelly's detail.
Right. I want to get guys in here that I know work. You want to work at the field? And I kind of looked at him. He goes, I know how you work. Just give it a shot with the 2 groups. I know you like to do ropes. Franco does ropes. It'll free me up to do other stuff. We can make the school work. I said, okay, I'll give it 2 classes. So again, it was Billy Kennedy was there. Is it a fit for everybody? Is it a fit for all the instructors? So that's, I did 2 groups, and I enjoyed myself. I had a good time and it worked, and I stayed. For that reason, I stayed. It got me the MOI, the method of instruction, which to me is one of the best courses in the NYPD, or the better courses they offer. That little certificate has allowed me to teach in any teaching environment up to a university. So, for me, it was beneficial. It kept me up on my skills because you were constantly hands-on doing something. And you still got to go to good jobs because we still had a fully loaded REP that we could take out and do, and we had specialty equipment. So it was almost like the best of both worlds.
Sounds like it.
So, huh?
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So, and again, you can have a crappy work environment, but if you have a great bunch of guys that you're working with, doesn't seem like work. It doesn't seem like work.
That's true.
John, like I said, John and I were there for God knows how long. He used to pull in Dennis Healy and Andy Stromfeld when he had to do a train lifting. When we did train extrication, we would pull them in because, again, it's the transit guys. And I never forget Dennis Healy, myself, and John are in one of the classrooms, and we're discussing what we're going to do the next day for train extrication. And Lieutenant Murphy, John Murphy, who was running the school, he had gotten hurt in 9/11. He's running the school.
His arm got cut.
And he walks by the door, and usually by 8 a.m., John's on his 12th cup of coffee. So talk about he just bounces off the wall. But great boss. So he walks by the door. We hear him stop, and he backs up, and he looks in, and he goes, 3 transit guys in a room alone talking together. I don't like this. Dennis, without missing a beat, goes, Lou, I feel like an Irish guy in the mafia. No matter how many guys I hit, I'll never be a made man. Right? That's what it was being transit in ESU. It's
right.
Like, you're still transit, they're transit guys standing together. But it was best of everything. Eddie Reyes, what the heck was Andy's name? Andy B. The hamburger, I can't think of his name. Joe Carter.
Talking about Andy Burchett or a different Andy?
No, different Andy. No. This was
Bonadillo. Bonadillo.
He was an EMT for a while.
Tony, is Bonadillo? I think it is. Yeah.
Bonadillo.
Yeah, he was in 2 truck for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he went down to the field. He was doing EMT stuff. Joe Holt, Eddie Reyes, Carter was in. They were hazmat.
Yeah.
Kevin Devine was in hazmat. I just Joe Toscano, myself, Bushing. Who else did we have? I mean, it was just
Darrell Summers.
Darrell was already gone by then. Darrell stayed to the truck. I love Darrell dearly, but Darrell had to pump up that. He was very knowledgeable, but it was like listening to paint dry. You really be like, Darrell, we need a break, please.
I didn't say it. She did. If you watch the show, I did not say it.
Now Darrell's a big boy.
Yes.
So Darrell having the military background.
Yep, Navy.
When we went to this poly blend shirt in EMRU, Darrell went to iron his shirt and it burned. Okay. When you're crawling under a train dealing with stuff that can burn and melt, you don't want a poly blend, shirt, because you're going to lean up against something hot. It's going to melt. So Darrell had rolled his sleeve up because he made a burn spot. And I think it was Mike O'Connor. And I forget, Mike goes, your sleeve's rolled up. And Darrell goes to roll it down. He goes, well, your shirt is burned. And you know how polite he is? He goes, sir, I've spent the majority of my life in the military, and I know how to iron a shirt. We can't have this. This will melt under a train. And you can't yell at him because he's just so polite, And I just love him dearly, But such a cast of characters. Eddie Reyes, we were running a hazmat job for training on a Sunday. And Eddie Reyes is all serious. And I forget who I'm with, but we're setting up the decon line. And I don't know if you've heard this name before, Chief Camadana.
Oh, yes. Charlie.
Micromanaging individual. So we're now all joking around because we got half of it set up, and Eddie is trying to be really serious. And the chief goes, "So how long does it take to set up one of these, and how many guys you have?" He goes, "Well, when you have a good bunch of guys like these guys," and at that point we were doing like a Keystone Cop imitation, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. And he goes, "But if you look this way," it's just, you have to have fun.
Right.
You have to have fun. We had another hazmat job. Where again, the animosity between us and the fire department, we had to hook into the fire hydrant. We needed water. So they're all going, "I'm not going over, I'm not going over. No, they're not going to give us water." "Yeah, give me the hose." Just look at me. So take the hair down. My younger days when I was real pretty.
Oh, don't say that. You look great.
I am buttoned enough, and I come over like a twin. "Hi, do you think we can get some water?" And he's like, "Oh, you could." And I go back to the roof. I'm like, "And that's how you do it." So I used it to my advantage when I could. And, other than that, I was Miss Nita,
Don't say was. You're still pretty. You look great.
I try. I'm not bad for 60.
No, not at all. Listen, as a guy, I always tell this because my mom's the same way. My mom's 50. She takes great care of herself. She takes pride in that. The genes, listen, it's different for guys, but I hope to look that good when I'm that age, man. I'm 23. I got some time to go. I want to look that good.
I'm trying.
Well,
I'm
you go.
trying.
You're succeeding.
People,
You're succeeding.
the funny thing is, when I had my hip replacement, yes, I'm on my second hip replacement. And for those out there, guys, I no longer squeak. I used to. Yeah. I literally used to squeak.
When you would walk?
My original hip replacement sounded like a squeaky door. Swear to God, squeaked. Ask anybody who comes on that heard my hip. They will tell you Anita squeaked.
My goodness. I'm imagining that.
They still ask me. So I had the hip revision about 2 years ago.
Right.
I forgot where I was going with this.
You're on your second hip replacement.
Wait a minute. Where was I going with this? Squeaky hip? Oh, completely forgot.
You have time. You have time.
Keep talking because it'll come back to my head.
While it comes back to you, Franco Barbario's watching. He doesn't pop up here. It says LinkedIn user, but I checked on LinkedIn and I know it's him. I think you mean me, or talking about earlier about promotions. He's like, "I love the other Franco, but I left SDS to get promoted and luckily came back a short time."
Yes, you did, Franco.
Yeah. Yes. Franco
You
Barbario.
want to hear a Franco story?
Yes, I do. And by the way, before you tell it, Franco Barbario, who, by the way, should really come on the show. Go ahead.
Every time there's a nor'easter with a full moon, our base floods. We had a class. It just, we're right by the water.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, it makes sense. You're right by the water.
Our water table is about 6 feet down. We know that because we did a trench rescue class and dug down with a bobcat about 6 feet and hit water.
Not good.
No. So Franco's running the school, and the class is in. So we suspended classes. Who's filling sandbags? Who's placing sandbags? Who's moving equipment? So I'm there with all of my students. Franco's handing out assignments. You three do this. You three do this. You three do this. So I'm the last one, and he goes, "Anita, you're gonna make dinner." And my head started to turn.
Mistake.
And he goes, "Now hold on. Before you give me that look." And in the back of my head, I'm going, how's he digging himself out of this one? There's nothing he's going to say to me. He goes, "We're going to be here until whenever." He goes, "There is nothing in that kitchen. I see there's nothing in the cupboards. We're going to be hungry and I want to eat something good. And I know that you can figure out something to make in that kitchen with what's there. I can't trust anybody else with that." And I'm like, son of a gun. Got me on that one. All right. He got me. I'll make something good. Spit in your food, though. No, I did not. I did not spit in your food.
Even if you did it, statute of limitations is up anyway, so you're good.
But no, it was just when he said that to me, I just looked at him. I'm like, did he really just tell me to go into the kitchen and cook? How's he digging himself out of this one? Okay, I'll be open-minded. And he's like, yeah, I pulled it out too. I made something good. Because I people think when you do this line of work that you don't do girl things. But my father used to say, "Honey, it's great that you can use a come along, but a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So I learned how to cook, and I learned how to bake, and I learned how to sew. And it was, I remember there was Bodenberg, one of the guys in 10 truck, rips his only pair of work pants from belt loop to crotch.
Lovely.
And beelines right to me and says, listen, I don't have time to waste. And I know you're the only one that might have it. Do you have needle and thread? Sure do. Go downstairs. The only color I had was black because that's what we use in the uniforms. I hand him the needle and thread. I said, I've already threaded it for you. This is what I get. And I'm standing there looking at him. He goes, you can do better? And I go, yeah, I can. So I just take it. I do this, and I start to sew. And he's looking at me. And I go, come back in 20 minutes. Your pants will be done.
And they were.
So it's that conundrum of, how does she know how to do that when she knows how to do this? But, I'm still a girl.
Yeah.
I'm still a girl. I'll go through a door with you, but when we're not working, please hold the door. I'm still a girl.
No, listen, there's that balancing act. And listen, that would, for me specifically, when it comes to women, that you're right. The way to my heart, at least, is also through food. But also, in addition to that, and I've been raised as a gentleman, so I will hold the door for you generally out there. Am I pitching myself to the ladies? You know it. But on top of that, like I said, besides the cooking aspect, that's also important too, to know how to do those other things. Because Lord knows I wouldn't be able to survive. So can you please sew these pair of pants? Yeah.
Cooking, baking.
Yeah.
I think Glenn wanted to take off a piping along the side of his pants.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got his knife. Come over here. You ever see one of these? It's a hem remover. They actually make a thing to take the hem out.
Right.
I said, here, use this. Where'd you get this? I'm a girl. I sew. No, you don't. Yeah, I do. Trust me, I do.
Yeah. And also, listen, and also the extroverted personality too, because somebody's got to tell the waiter I did not order any fries, and it's not going to be me. So, listen, that's where it's important too. And I can see why you blend it in so well amongst many other things. Yes, but for women, it's a balancing act.
It is, it's just, again, I can do the job. I'm not there because I've gotten that look so many times that, oh, you're taking the place of a guy. Well, no, because I can actually pull my weight.
Right.
I know how to use the tools. I grew up with these tools. I grew up with pneumatic tools.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, running around on job sites and wheels and pulling stuff up to second floor. And, you learn a lot. Saturday was with my dad in the garage. You had to learn how to fix things. So I knew all my tools. I knew how to do things. When I was 18, I said to my father, I said, show me how to change a tire. I don't ever want to be stuck. If I had a daughter, I'd do the same thing. Like, come on, we're going to change a tire today because if you're stuck on the side of the road, I want you to be able to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's just been my attitude. Can't means I won't. Can't means you don't want to. Right now, there's a lot of things that I don't want to do because I'm getting old and I just don't want to climb on my roof anymore and clean the gutters out. I don't want to lift up the door because I'm getting tired. So I put a motor on the door and I put leaf gutters on,
Can you please rest? You've earned it. You don't have to do things anymore. I am begging you. Can you please? You don't have to fire up the chainsaw at 1 a.m. I'm not asking you to do that, but just chill out. Throw your feet up. Watch the ball game. Stop. It's like I'm talking to my mom. She's the same way.
I have a 35-foot shed in the back, and it had a leak. So I bought a 30-foot extension ladder, climbed up on top, and I'm caulking all the seams. So I send a picture to my buddy that retired from Highway, and he goes, where the heck are you? I said, on top of the gray shed. Why? I said, there's a leak. I'm fixing it. But it's, what it is, Mike, I've been so capable my whole life. I look at something and go, okay, it's just going to take me a little longer to do it. My neighbor, when he sees me starting to work, he knows when I start taking out a sledgehammer, not to bother me anymore. I'm like, and I just look over at him. He's a commercial plumber. I'm like, how you doing? Leave me alone. I got this. If I need help, I'll ask. But but that's just the way it's been, you know. I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed what I did in the issue.
Oh,
To
it
me,
sounds
that was fun.
yeah. Now listen, it was a magic carpet ride for 15 years between transit rescue and
Yeah,
of course ESC
absolutely.
until
The
what was it?
18 was great. Andy Fessler was my partner for 3 months. Frankie Salamone. Uh, every time there was a bad guy, we found him.
Hmm.
If you were in that building, me and Andy found you. I remember when I was in the academy, I had bosses that would say, you know, bad guys will try to just put something up in front of their face like you can't see them. And I'm going, sure enough, we're doing not a warrant, we're a domestic issue, the 18. I was on the 18. So me and Andy do the search. It was the last room, it was the last door. He opens it because I have the bunker. Sure enough, there's the guy crouched down. He's got a shoebox in front of his face.
That'll work.
There's legs and there's the rest of you. I mean, come on, and get out, right?
Job security.
Guys in attics, guys under AC units, where, three other guys have walked by and I'm going, perp, perp, perp. And they're going, what do you mean? Under the AC unit, there's a guy. Oh, there is.
Hi.
And then it was a, remember the 90s when they had the pop-up parties in the warehouses?
I've heard the stories.
So shooting after shooting, this was West Side, 50, 57, 58, something like that.
Yep.
So the bad guy runs into the taxi place there. And the taxi place originally had an alleyway, but they built the next building right next to it. The only way to get into the alleyway was through a window. So we're looking from the adjacent building down. So the boss walks by, and Maddie was on me. Maddie was on that job with me. And I look down and I go, perp, underneath the big AC unit that was out the window. I saw his feet and I saw the top of the head. So I trot down, I go and get him. And I look for the gun. I also find the gun that night. I was too for Maddie looks at me, she's like, I'm scared of you. But it's that came from, I think, working in the subway all those years, because you used to see where all the homeless guys would sleep. And the guy's trying to tell me he's homeless. And I looked at him, I go, you are now wearing more jewelry than I own. You are not homeless. I said, I worked in the subway the first 9 years. I know homeless. You're not homeless. Stop that. Stop it. So we had another job on the A team again. Robbery gone wrong. They went to hold up a muffler store. There were 6 employees, and one of the employees was hiding in the back, and they actually called the job in. So we get there. There's still somebody there. We're looking. I climb up. So rather than the door coming in, they had a bump in to keep the cold air from coming in, but it didn't go all the way to the top, so there was storage. Yeah, he was up there. I climb up, and I'm going, perp, 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 up above the door. How'd you see him? I swear to God, it was his sweat. When I put the flashlight, he glistened. I had another guy in an attic. He opened his eyes. It was the whites of his eyes. He opened his eyes. I'm like, yeah, you in the corner, come on out. Don't make me come in there. Don't make me crawl across this, because I'm not going to be happy. So, it's Vinny Martinez and myself. We had another guy. This was great. Community center that's been broken into for I don't know how many times at this point. And the guy, we're with Canine. The guy's in a room. So we open up the door and we tell the guy he's got to come out. He goes, no. The Canine, he's getting all turned on now. If you've been with us long enough, you know that as the Canine guy goes, if you don't come out, we're going to send the dog in. And all the ESU cops are going, go boy, go, blah, 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 blah. So we're getting them all jacked up. So sure enough, he don't want to come out. We let the dog loose. He comes out. You hear that blood curdling. Oh, come out. Okay. So now I got to testify. So my job in ESU is to find the bad guy. So I look in places where a person can hide. I don't vouch for equipment. I don't vouch for tools. I don't do any of that. My job is to find the guy. Fast forward, ADA calls me in. I did the ESD too. I'm doing the grand jury. The ADA preps me. So the defendant's attorney starts to question me. And she goes, well, I don't understand. Why didn't you vouch for the tools? I said, my job in emergency services is to find the guy, find the perp, find whoever's in the building that's not supposed to be there. Well, then why didn't you look in a drawer? I said, because you can't fit in a drawer. I said, I only look in places you can find that somebody, an adult, can hide. So she kept asking me the same questions, and I finally said, listen, I do this, I do this, I do this. I don't do this, I don't do this. And there was no shooter on the grassy knoll. There was no second shooter on the grassy knoll. Do we have all that straight now? And she goes, yeah, no more questions. Well, apparently the ADA liked the way I testified. The following week, I get a call for another ESD2 that I did. And they're like, ADA so-and-so said to put you on the stand that you're good. I'm like, really? Yeah, okay. And the funniest thing, Mike, is that my mouth would get so dry, I would chew a piece of gum because I was so nervous. But apparently it didn't show. It's like that old never let him see you sweat. I would just, what do you want me to say?
Marissa Tomei and my cousin Vinny.
Yeah. Don't, because I can literally do whole scenes for you. Don't even go.
Fair enough. No, listen.
Everybody in Alabama knows one wheel gets stuck in the mud and the other one spins. And
I love that movie. I could, and I love Marissa Tomei, and she's still fine. Let me tell you, don't get me started on Marissa Tomei. I still love her.
My biological clock is ticking. Maybe it wasn't the right time.
No, that's good. I mean, listen, a lot of interesting jobs over the years, and I can see how you were able to blend in so well. I mean, you need to. Like I said, it's a tough job, but you got it.
Yeah, you blend.
And there are two
right
people.
Into that one, Mike.
I do. I definitely do blend. You can if you put me in a house where the walls might be slightly brown, I'm like the greatest demonstration of camouflage known to man. Just to further the joke. And by the way, congratulations, because before I get to the rapid fire, because 2 hours have flown by and it does not feel like it's been 2 hours, and I could talk to you all night. You are one of two people that have made me lose composure in a good way, to where I literally had to remove myself from the screen because I was laughing so hard.
I lost you for a second.
No, I had to literally put my head down so I could just gather myself, and that is Pat Pogan and yourself. So congratulations.
Patty Pogan. Who loves Patty Pogan?
Yes, Patty. Hi, Kitty. My doggy's downstairs. Otherwise, I'd bring him up and show him to you too. But hello, Kitty.
Well, you do realize 60 and single, they're just going to start coming to my house because it's right.
Fair.
I'll be the crazy cat lady in a couple of years. Let me interview Anita again. Meow.
Put her in an ESU uniform and put her to work. It is now time for the rapid fire for what has been one of the greatest episodes in this podcast's history. I kid you not when I say that. It's 5 hit-and-run questions from me, 5 hit-and-run answers from you. You could say pass if you want. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
First, best advice anyone ever gave you.
God gave you 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth, so you should listen and watch twice as much as you speak.
Good advice. Second, funniest colleagues you ever worked with.
John Bushing, Dennis Healy.
Covers that. I got to get Dennis Healy on the show.
Danny Haggerty. Forgot one.
There you go. I got Dennis Healy's on Facebook. I got to message him because I want him to come on the show. Third,
Dennis right now is in Dubai.
Is it for the martial arts things?
He didn't really say why, but I know he's in Dubai right now.
Okay, good for him. Listen, he travels the world. He's keeping busy for himself.
Well, he either does that or the medic thing. He hooked up with he bounces from thing to thing. And again, Dennis and I, same academy class, transit rescue together, ESU together. Again, friends, that's one of the idiots.
Third most uplifting call you ever responded to or job.
Uplifting. Doesn't have that. Go back to transit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you
my
can.
Transit days. Pregnant lady on the subway. Well, there's actually 2. Pregnant lady on the subway. I got her off. Everybody was complaining. She's 8.5 months pregnant. She passed out on Spring Street on the A. I get her off. She's like, oh my God, my husband's waiting for me at 34th Street. I said, we're going to take you to the hospital. Where is your husband? He's waiting by the booth. We were able to get a car to go to the booth to get her husband to meet her at the hospital. Meet with her at the hospital. That was one. And kids. Separated. It's not a lost child. It's a separated parent because they're more upset than the kid. Again, mom went to get off. She got stuck behind. She went to the next station. Mom loses her mind. the look on mom's face when you reunite the child with mom. That's always a good moment.
Oh yeah, of course. Can't even imagine what that must be like as a parent. Fourth, favorite bar or restaurant in New York City?
Favorite bar or restaurant in New York City?
You could say multiple.
It's in Lower Manhattan, and I can't think of the name. It's a steakhouse that's been there forever.
Sparks?
Delmonico's.
Delmonico's. I said Sparks because I was thinking about Paul Castellano. That's the first thing that came to my mind. I'm sorry. That's literally...
Delmonico, again, another day with, I think it was John and Dennis.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good place to go to. Another place on my list of many. That's why I asked that question, because I got to put these things on my list.
Alaskan, I forget what the dessert was, and lollipop pork chops. Oh my God.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Fifth and finally, what advice, and you taught for a while, so if you can grab a brand spanking new cop out of the STS that just got into emergency service, what advice would you give that brand spanking new e-cop?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to put your hands on the equipment. Find someone who you're comfortable with. If you don't want to ask everybody, because sometimes we can be a little rough, ask somebody who you're comfortable with to show you if you don't know something. Always ask.
There you go. There you go.
That's and I'll relate another story to you. It's never a good thing when you come into your office at 6 a.m. and the sergeant is already looking through your training records. That's bad. Franco's the sergeant. What happened? Somebody didn't. So the CO2 gun, the dart gun that we use for the dogs, for animal control, if you don't bleed it out, then it's hard to unscrew the knob on the back to change out the cartridge. We can't use all of the cartridges when we're doing this class. So we changed 3 of them out during the class, but not everybody has their hands on. We show them. You have to constantly cock the back and pull the trigger until you hear the canister discharge. Well, apparently he must have missed the part where if there's resistance, keep cocking it to bleed the air out. Well, apparently he didn't, and rather than asking the senior officer or someone else to help him, he decided to put the thing between his legs and with his Leatherman looking over it, turn the knob, and knob blasted off and hit him in the eye. Yeah.
Not good.
I can't fix not common sense. Anything that has air, if there's still tension or pressure in that line, it's going to be hard to unscrew. So that would say, hey, bleed it out again. Keep going. So it's the same principle with the airbag lines. You have to bleed the line out. If not, the hose can shoot out of your hand. So to me, there's a certain amount of common sense that you have to come to the unit with, and I can't teach you that. You have to step back and look at the mechanism. Never be in a rush. And I do that still till today. I'm like, all right, why isn't this working? I'm like, all right, the knee bone's connected to the hip bone's connected to. Why isn't this working? Why am I still squeaking? Still don't know why I was squeaking. I don't know where that story was going, but it was going somewhere. Everybody always asked me to squeak. Do you know how loud my hip squeaks on 9/11 when I'm walking through the cemetery? It does.
Still?
Not anymore. I had
second one.
vision done. I had the lining of my hip shattered 2 years ago.
That's not good.
No. I actually have the X-ray out. It looks terrible. I have all my X-rays. I'm like, yeah, look at this one. But it's good. Like, when I end up in the hospital, I'm like, hey, what surgery have you had? This is what I have. So I look at this picture and the lining completely shattered. And every time I went to weight it, all of the nerve endings, it was excruciating pain. And if one of those pieces would have dislodged and got into my bloodstream, it would have been a problem. So when I finally got in to see the doctor on Monday, he goes, yeah, you're the first person I'm seeing tomorrow. You're not going home. So since the hip was revised, I had a revision done. It doesn't squeak anymore, sadly. I'm no longer a party favor. I can stick up on people again.
Let's see what we covered today. Let's see. Hip replacements, squeaking, ticking, perp jobs. Also, no stadium details, which you should have gotten, but that's okay.
No. I didn't say Shea Stadium. I got Yankee Stadium a lot.
Okay. Well, there you go. At least you got, so you got details
Yankee
there.
Stadium. I've had the Waldorf for presidential
good.
observation post. Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Just because I didn't do it, because you know what? The Mets never run a series.
Once. Once.
The Yankees every year run a series. That's why we always at Yankee Stadium.
Oh, there you go. Yes. Yeah, so a lot was covered in 2 hours. More animal
You missed the
jobs.
Pope.
That was 95.
I did the Pope in 95. That was
UN
my first big detail.
That was UN 50 as well at the same time. Yeah, you guys were
Yes.
busy in 95. Between
Yes.
that, Yankee Stadium, like I said, they were taking on the Mariners that year in the ALDS. So you guys didn't. That was a lot of overtime back then, I imagine.
Well, it's a busy season.
Oh yeah, of course, from September through.
It's the only season. It's the U.S. Open, the UN General Assembly. That's our busy season.
Starts in August, ends in December, because then you got the Macy's Day Parade, you got the Halloween Parade, and you got the ball drop in New York City Marathon, ball drop in Times Square, December 31st.
Yeah, I've done New Year's Eve below the ground, twice in transit underneath Times Square. I've never been in Times Square. I've been on the outskirts of Times Square.
You're not missing much.
I was very happy to but sit there and okay, this is fine for me.
Yes. This has been wonderful. Stick around. We'll say our goodbyes off the air. Before I say goodbye to the audience, is there any shout outs to anyone or anything that you would like to give?
Pretty much I was saying hello to everybody. If you see Greg Welch, tell him I say hello. Sorry, I'm not in New York anymore. I would come up and visit. Mm-hmm. Jeff Dito I'm in contact with back and forth on Facebook. A lot of the guys, it's all Facebook stuff.
Yeah,
that we stay in touch with.
Well, that's how I was able to find you to start getting the ball rolling. Then I met you at Floyd Bennett Field, so it was great to finally be able to get you on the show. Because as soon as I met you, I'm like, I read about you, John Latanzio. He was standing right next to me. I'm like, can you please give me your number? And thankfully, we were able to link up. So thanks to John, who was able to play a big role in making this happen. Franco Barbario, quit ducking me. Come on the show. I say that with love, but I want you on the show. Oh, I'm not interesting. Yes, you are. Come on the show, so stop it. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, this was supposed to happen.
Franco, if I did it, you can do it.
Okay, exactly. There you go. And the other Franco was already on Baraducci, so I'm trying to get the other Franco B to come on the show. So complete the circle. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, 6-decade firefighter, started in the 70s, served through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and this decade before he retired last year. Steve Kubler, retired 43-year veteran of the FDNY, finished up as a deputy chief, will be here for volume 43 of the best, the bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. And someone you worked with is next Tuesday. Met him at Two Truck. He was in an episode of Cops when they filmed in New York City. Mentioned him earlier. One Mike Core will be here for
Mike Core. Haven't seen him in a couple of years now.
Yeah,
Mike and did teaching with Homeland also.
Yep, he was helping out, especially with their Las Vegas field office. So he'll be here to tell me about all that next Tuesday for volume 33 of the ECOPS inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. And last note, too, for those of you in the chat, if there's any one of you out there in touch with Vinny Martinez, a.k.a. the Termite of Housing Rescue, like I said, please give him my contact information. I've been trying to find Vinny for a while now. In the meantime, on behalf of Anita Rosato, this has been episode 270, volume 32 of the ECOPS inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. I am Mike Colón. We will see you next time. And as the ECOPS like to say, anytime, baby. Take care. See you Friday.
Bye-bye.